Hello! Hello! It is Wednesday. It also means it is fanfiction reading day. Hooray! Hello, Vegito. Hello, Sam. Hello, Time Glitch. Hello. Welcome in. Hope you're all having a good day, and let's get some cozy music going. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Hopefully the volume on it is okay. I was testing it last minute. But yeah. Fanfiction reading. This is for the 450 follower goal that we had. Are these fun? Alright, good deal. Alright, so the fanfiction was a Royal AU fanfiction, so do with that what you will. We're in royalty here. You know, like kingdoms, kings, queens, you know, stuff like that. So that's kind of your little introductory there. But yeah, I'm excited for this one because I've been working on this one for a long time. So I'm ready to read it. So how the reading will work, costume change, bam, we're Daisy. Phantom, this is, Stray Kids, Royal AU fanfiction. So, there we go, 'tis Stray Kids. So how these usually go is I'm just reading, and I probably will not like check chat until like between scenes or between chapters. So I usually don't like look at chat a whole lot during the reading. So there is that. And hello DA, hello, welcome in. Hope you're having a good day. Let me adjust a little bit here. So yeah, once we kind of get into reading, if there's, you know, things I want to comment on from chat, I'll do that between scenes or between chapters, and you'll know there's usually little markers between the scenes. So there we go, and I'm doing pretty good too. Alright. So we have the last couple I don't think have really had like descriptions, so this is like the first one that I've really had like a description for in a while. So here we go. The kingdom of Aria reigned throughout the years. Nobody had questioned anything until the king decided to gather men of lower status to send to an unnecessary war. Innocent men were killed when not needed. Nobles turned a blind eye while commoners still held a grudge. King Kim Jungmin ruled effortlessly while his team kept him in power. He taught everything he knew to his son, the crown prince Kim Sungmin. King Jungmin had plans to arrange a marriage for Sungmin so he could take over the throne. Little did they know, a group of bandits were plotting something big to set the kingdom of Aria in a frenzy. Alright, so there's your description. Here we go. Okay, I think it's just between tracks on the... Everything just like stopped for a second. I'm like, oh no, do we break it? I don't think it's broken. I think we're fine. Alright, chapter 1. Just another regular day. Sunshine coated the vast skies of the kingdom of Aria. Green trees, peach flowers, and blue butterflies painted the castle town. Townsfolk were out and about, participating in a joyous parade. The king loved to throw parades every so often. Today was one of those blissful days. Cheers of affection were heard throughout the parade. The people of the town shouted praises for the royal family. After a rigorous morning, the carriage made its way out of the castle town. In the carriage sat King Kim Jungmin, smiling and waving to the cheering people. A white uniform showing the royal family crest laid smooth on his broad shoulders. His graying hair stood out in the sunlight as the people cheered. His face wrinkled with age as his smile never faltered to his people. The sound of the people gossiping was music to his ears. You hear that, my son? That's the most beautiful sound anybody can hear, Jungmin boasted. Across the seat from Jungmin was his son, Prince Kim Sungmin. Dressed in a similar white uniform, he sat with his body shifted slightly away from fully facing his father. His dark hair styled neatly with a few stray hairs sticking out messily. Accompanying a sheer look of boredom, his sharp brown eyes stared out the window. He turned to the king and bluntly replied, "I hear it." Jungmin showed a questioning look. "You never seem interested in the kingdom these days. Anything going on?" "No, father, nothing is going on. I am fine," Jungmin answered. His gaze returned to outside the carriage. Jungmin sighed as the carriage returned to the castle courtyard. "Son, sooner or later you'll have to care about how things are done in Aria. After your mother passed, things have been hectic around here," he tried explaining as the carriage stopped and Sungmin walked off. "I know how things have been around here. I'm doing my best to do my duties. Is it not enough for you?" Sungmin asked carefully as he stopped briefly and turned around. "What you do is plenty," Jungmin answered as he caught up with Sungmin. "But you can't keep doing your simple duties forever. The kingdom will need its successor, and with your sister off doing who knows what, the responsibilities fall on you. We'll have to start looking at marriage for you sooner or later. We cannot do that if you're busy ignoring your duties." Sungmin released a sigh as he ignored his father's rants and entered the castle. He walked through the white glossy halls he knew by heart, greeting the staff along the way. Separation from his father was what he needed for the rest of the day. After a few minutes, he made it to the east wing, his wing. He was greeted by one of his personal guards. His dark hair was messier, but still styled neatly. His appearance was more unkempt, but still put together. "Hello, Prince Sungmin. How was the parade?" "Mino, I told you not to be so formal," Sungmin bluntly replied as he walked in a big room and sat down on one of the couches. "Your father watches all. If he catches me greeting you informally, I could get killed," Mino simply replied as he closed the door to the room and sat down on an adjacent couch. "So, are you going to answer me?" Sungmin groaned and answered, "I hate those stupid parades. I swear, father uses them to fuel his own ego." "Someone needs to step up to fulfill the king's position. The only one legitimately qualified is you," Mino casually said. "And don't you say you hate it, because I already know you do." "Then, instead of telling me you know I hate it, how about helping me on how to solve my problem?" Sungmin scolded Mino as he leaned back in his spot. "I keep telling you to run away with us, but you won't do it," Mino replied as he leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "Chan already has everything ready to go at moment's notice. All you gotta do is say the word." "As much as I hate being here, I can't leave the people," Sungmin argued as he leaned his head back to stare at the ceiling. Rumblings of varying degree interrupted the conversation. Footsteps were heard running around. Was it the royal guard? What were they doing running about? "I wonder if it's those bandits again," Mino thought out loud. "Is it the same ones from last week?" Sungmin asked. "Possibly," Mino sighed. "From what I've been told, they don't seem dangerous, just pesky." "There's been so many of them lately," Sungmin commented. "The guards should take care of it." "You don't have to deal with these pesky bandits if you pack up and run away with us," Mino casually stated with a cocked eyebrow. "Hyung, don't bully me into this," Sungmin scolded. "Bandits are everywhere. I don't think I would escape them at all if I ran away with you." Sungmin and Miho stare at one another for a few minutes as the sounds of the guards handling the bandits. Releasing their respective sighs, they continued on with their day. They did their best to avoid everything outside the castle walls. Just another regular day. Thank you for the lurk, Sam. Thank you, thank you. South of the castle's town laid a slum tucked away beyond a small gate. The buildings and houses were not as well kept as the buildings near the castle. Dirty, but not complete filthiness. Two men ran back and hopped the small gate while being chased by royal guards. Once they crossed the gate, the guards gave up on the chase. The two men exchanged a fist bump as they ventured deeper into the slums. They walked for a few minutes until they reached a small two-story house. Opening the door with ease, they walked in comfortably. "Mission was successful," one of the men called out. "Where's our payment?" the other man called out. One of the men stood taller with short dark brown hair and round eyes. The other stood slightly shorter with dirty blonde hair sitting slightly longer and shaggier. "Taehyun, Hyunwoo, you said you wouldn't accept payment for this," a woman's voice called out. The taller one, Taehyun, popped his hip in a sassy pose, while the shorter one, Hyunwoo, wore an unimpressed expression. A short woman with long, dirty blonde hair, matching Hyunwoo's hair, walked down the stairs. She dusted off her long, baggy shirt, and she stood in front of Taehyun and Hyunwoo. Her stance mirrored Taehyun's. "You two agreed to scout the castle without a payment," she scolded as she glared with her light hazel eyes. "Shim Yuta, if I may, scouting the castle is a dangerous job," Taehyun casually explained. "Nuna, the guards are getting more aware by the day. We can't really make progress if the guards keep catching us," Hyunwoo added. The woman, Yuta, glanced between the two men standing before her. Releasing a sigh, she moved to sit in the kitchen. "This operation is going nowhere," she complained as she connected her forehead to the counter. Taehyun and Hyunwoo moved to sit on either side of her at the kitchen bar. "I understand you want to get revenge on the royal family. They're all assholes. But we should really start thinking carefully about how we want to go about it before we die a pointless death," Hyunwoo calmly explained. "If only the royal family weren't filled with power-hungry dicks," Yuta muttered as she lifted her head up. "I guess we'll regroup for now. We can come up with a safer tactic later. You two earned yourselves a nice meal." Yuta stood up and started gathering ingredients to cook a meal. She moved around in the kitchen effortlessly. The want was not there, but she appeared used to taking care of the cooking. After cooking a small meal, she plated the food and handed it to Taehyun and Hyunwoo. "Thank you, Nuna," Hyunwoo said as he started eating. Taehyun nodded along and also started eating. Yuta watched as the two ate the meal as if it were their last. She smiled sadly to herself before walking out of the kitchen and to the front door. She slipped on a simple pair of shoes and left the house. She walked through the slums towards a small shop. She greeted the shop owner casually as she grabbed a basket to fill with needed items. Swiftly, she completely filled her basket and walked up to the owner with a smile. After paying for her items with every bit of money she had in her pockets, she headed back home with 2 full bags. On her walk home, she spotted a couple of royal guards by the gate harassing a young woman. Yuta watched carefully as she changed course and approached the commotion. One of the guards shoved the young woman onto the ground, which prompted Yuta to drop her bags and run to her aid. She stood in front of the woman and stared at the guards with determined eyes. "What business do you have in the slums?" she boldly asked. "His Majesty ordered us to keep a close watch on the border of the slums. Bandits have been running amok around the castle," one of the guards answered. "Then what did this innocent woman do to you for you to shove her so harshly?" Yuta questioned. "Ma'am, she was the one who disrespectfully ran up to us demanding something about her father. She was the aggressor," the other guard replied. Yuta glared at the 2 guards before helping the woman up. She turned to the woman and quietly asked, "What's going on?" "The royal family killed my father," the woman quietly replied in a bitter tone. Something in Yuta snapped. These guards pushed a young woman when all she wanted were answers. She understood 2 lowly guards would not have any answers, but they did not need to exert violence on someone completely innocent. She gently grabbed the woman's arms and led her away from the guards. "Come with me. We can talk about things later," she carefully instructed. "By the way, what's your name?" "Kim Jiwoo," the woman, Jiwoo, answered. "All right, Jiwoo. Let's talk business." Yuta smirked as she helped Jiwoo walk towards her house. And there's chapter 1. Hello, Johnny. Hello, hello. Welcome in. Hope you're having a good day. So we got chapter 1 in the books. A good introduction, I'd say. bottle. Chapter 2. Marriage Proposal? Commotion erupted on what was once a quiet morning in the castle. Workers were running rampant after specific orders were given. Seungmin roamed the halls, hoping for a peaceful morning, only to find them filled with chaos. Most of the workers were in his face, asking various questions. Your Highness, do you have an ideal type? Prince Seungmin, is there any particular features you look for in a woman? Is there anybody who you would not consider? He promptly ignored the questions as he made his way towards his father's study. The noise was too much for him, and he needed to know the reason. He opened the door to the study and waltzed right in. Jungmin looked up from his desk and smiled. There's my son! What brings you in here this morning? Father, what is going on? Everyone has been asking me strange questions non-stop, Seungmin explained. I am not getting married anytime soon, so why are these questions so invasive? Jungmin released a sigh as he stood up from his chair and walked over to Seungmin. He reached up and patted Seungmin on the shoulder and calmly explained. Son, it's time we actually started thinking about marriage. Your mother would have wanted this for you, and I will be carrying out the operation to find you a suitable bride. Seungmin groaned loudly. Ugh, Father, please! I told you I have no interest in getting married right now. Why do this all of a sudden? Sometimes you get no say in the matter. That's how it was when I was in your position, Jungmin sighed as he explained his side. So it's okay to do these kinds of things behind my back? Seungmin argued. This is how it is around here. Now, if you'll listen, you'll know about what exactly will happen, Jungmin attempted to explain. Alright, father, explain yourself. Seungmin stood close to his father in calm rage. You are not getting married yet. The servants are only asking questions because I asked them to find candidates for your choosing. You will at least get the choice on who you will marry out of the suitable candidates I select. Jungmin matched Seungmin's calmness. Seungmin continued to glare at his father. He felt himself pouring with rage. To prevent himself from blowing up, he promptly left the room. He stormed off to the East Wing, where his safe haven was. Everything was normal, so why did this news spring on him so suddenly? Did the king have something against him? Nothing made sense. You seem angry, Your Highness, Mino commented as Seungmin practically stomped his way through the halls. Mino, how would you feel if someone was setting you up for a marriage you want nothing to do with? Seungmin asked bitterly. I mean, you are the crown prince. This seems inevitable, Mino answered. You don't want to get married. I respect that. So got any plans to stop this plot? Seungmin shot a glare towards Mino. He nervously fiddled with his hands as he thought about the events that transpired throughout the morning. What exactly was he going to do? He woke up today with everything in disarray. Constant questions being asked about a potential partner were being thrown at him when he had zero interest in marriage. He never wanted the throne to begin with. Judging by the lack of response, you've got nothing, Mino slyly stated. As your faithful servant, may I help bust you out of here? Seungmin stared at Mino as he pondered his thoughts. That's not a bad idea. He cracked a small smile. Well, we're not running away like you want. We can at least take a walk to the town. Progress, Mino replied as he laughed. He stood up to prepare everything for the day in the town. 10 minutes later, Mino and Seungmin were ready to head out into the town. The two opted to walk to town. Several servants and the castle staff attempted to talk to Seungmin, but Mino shooed them away with a single glare. The walk to the town was a peaceful one. Time away from the castle was what Seungmin needed. After a 15-minute walk, Seungmin and Minho entered the town square. Many of the residents recognized Seungmin, but were too nervous to approach him. They opted for respectful bows as they walked by them. Seungmin and Minho walked towards some of the small restaurants down one of the emptier streets. The two entered a smaller cafe and were immediately treated like honored guests. Seungmin and Mino sat at a table in the calm atmosphere as the two sipped on their coffees. The calm atmosphere turned into one of mild chaos. Loud sounds of glass breaking reverberated through the area. They wanted to investigate, but the owner stopped them. "If I may, Prince Seungmin, I'll get the local guards to handle this matter," the owner explained tiredly. "Tell me what's going on," Seungmin demanded. Curiosity was overtaking his mind. "It's probably those bandits again. They've been looting places around here for weeks," the owner explained as he walked out of the door to observe the commotion. Seungmin wanted to stand up to look, but Mino stopped him briefly and took the lead to the spot outside. The two saw a group of 3 bandits raiding a shop across the street. 2 of them stood taller than the third. Nobody could tell their identities, with their faces mostly covered by hoods and masks. And the exposed parts of their faces were drawn with overly dramatic eyeliner. The owner sighed. "Not these guys again." The bandits started running away with handfuls of bags. Mino acted quickly as he attempted to stop the bandits. The best he could do was pull down the shortest one's hood slightly. Strands of dirty blonde hair poked out from under their hood as the figure fought off Mino with minimal effort. As the figure pushed off Mino, they looked right at Seungmin. Seungmin looked right into their eyes and froze. Were their eyes gold? Green? He was not sure. They were getting away, but his intuition told him to let them go. "Stand down, Mino," he calmly commanded. Mino seemed confused, but agreed with the prince. The shop owner appeared more frustrated as he practically stomped back to his cafe. A few moments later, a shorter male ran out of the building that had just been robbed. "Those damn Veritas bandits again!" the man yelled in anger. "Now how am I supposed to pay the big boss for the goods?" "Big boss? Goods?" The man looked at Seungmin and Mino before cowering in fear. Why was the crown prince here on a random afternoon? Hello, your highness. What brings you into town today?" He tried asking, but the two were not having it. "Is there any illegal activity that we should know about?" Seungmin asked calmly, yet commanding. "If you do not tell me now, I will have officers come here to investigate." The man tried to run, but Mino stopped him with ease. Moments later, Seungmin managed to hail one of the nearby officers to begin an investigation. Princely duties met. Seungmin and Minho let the officers take charge of the case as they started walking away from the street. Seungmin appeared in deep thought. "Do you think those bandits know of that shop's potential money laundering?" He spoke his thoughts out loud. "Maybe. The guy did say their name, right?" Mino asked. "Veritas bandits. At least that's what I remember hearing," Seungmin answered. He re-entered the privacy of his own thoughts on the walk through town. Mino chuckled to himself, watching the prince immerse himself into something so seemingly simple. I like how both POV characters have different views of societal problems. This guy is worried about bandits while the woman is worried about abuse of power grabs. Yes. Yes. Oh, it gets good, trust me. Overly dramatic eyeliner. Yeah. And hello, Del Tora. Hello, welcome in. Hope you're having a good day. I actually prefer my illegal activities to not be known about. I mean, of course, right? Why would you preach about your illegal activities? Yura, Taehyun, and Hyunwoo tiredly walked into their house. All 3 were panting in exhaustion from the events in town. "Holy shit, Nuna, you almost got caught by the prince," Hyunwoo stated as he collapsed on the floor. "I did not almost get caught," Yura tiredly protested. "All that could have given me away was my hair." "Still, Princey Boy almost saw you," Taehyun teasingly commented. Yura rolled her eyes as she dropped the bags onto the kitchen bar. Jiwoo heard the commotion and walked downstairs to check. Yura saw Jiwoo and smiled. "We have a bit more now." Jiwoo seemed to relax seeing Yura smile in relief. Yura ran around the house to make sure the house was taken care of. Jiwoo watched in awe as Yura worked on everything. Taehyun and Hyunwoo urged Jiwoo to sit on the couch with them as Yura did her own thing. So, what's this about the prince? Jiwoo asked as she sat down on the edge of the couch. Taehyun stared blankly until it clicked that they were being loud when they walked in the house. Oh, that? We had a brief run-in with the Crown Prince while we were doing our sworn duties as thieves. While brief, we managed to best them. Taehyun, please. We did absolutely nothing. Nuna did all of the work and was the one who actually confronted the prince. Hyunwoo corrected as he pushed Taehyun's shoulder. Even then, it wasn't really a confrontation. Yuna chimed in as she leaned on the back of the couch. His guards got to me first, and he about pulled my hood off. Other than that, nothing really happened. But imagine if that was the beginning of some amazing and wild romance! Taehyun borderline squealed with excitement. With who? The prince or his guard? Yuna sarcastically stated with a scoff. Why not both? There's no shame in that. Plus, they could be into that. We don't know. Taehyun replied with a shrug. Taehyun! Yuna scolded as she whacked him upside the head. Hyunwoo laughed out loud as Jiwoo chuckled softly. Hyunwoo turned to Jiwoo and told her, This is normal with these two. Ignore them if you wish. Jiwoo laughed in response. She watched as Yura and Taehyun bickered relentlessly. After a few moments, Yura diverted everyone's attention to more serious matters. Now that we got the laughs out of our system, we need to figure out how exactly to overthrow the royal family, Yura stated as she stood up from the couch and paced around the room. The people of the slums will gladly help us out. We just need a plan first, Hyunwoo replied. That's the problem, Yura said. She continued to pace around, thinking about ideas. Direct approaches get us caught easily. Indirect approaches also get us caught easily. We need something. Their thoughts were interrupted when a loud knock echoed in the house. Yuna's expression turned into one of confusion. She walked to the door and opened it only to find nobody there. Looking around, she found a letter sticking out of the mailbox. The envelope bared the royal family crest. She walked back in the house and opened the letter. What do the assholes want now? Hyunwoo sarcastically asked. Yura read through the letter and handed it to Hyunwoo. Apparently they're looking for bachelorettes for our wonderful crown prince, she answered as she sat on the table. Hyunwoo and Taehyun read through the letter. Princey boy is getting married, huh? Says here there's going to be a ball next month with all the bridal candidates, Taehyun told Yura. Jiwoo listened intently and sparked an idea. Ani, if I may, I think I have an idea on how to overthrow the royal family. Yura looked at Jiwoo with curiosity, but the look changed into one of mild panic when she realized what the idea could possibly be. Sworn duties as thieves. Is thief a title? Like, there's a difference between bandits robbing people and thieves and part of a guild or something. Probably not that line. Just stuck with me. Yeah, I mean, it's just... I think that's just Taehyun being Taehyun. Oh, don't mind me, just stretching. Chapter 3. Bridal Candidate. Yura released a sigh as she walked through the slums alongside Hyunwoo. Jiwoo's idea was a great one, the best any of them had ever come up with, but Yura was extremely reluctant. Nuna, you know this is about the only way to set the plan in motion, Hyunwoo reasoned. I know. It still doesn't make me a fan of the idea, Yura replied. We'll see what Granny Nada has to say. If anybody can help us pull this off, it's her, Hyunwoo said with a confident nod. The two continued walking down the dirt street. They greeted everyone on the way to one of the bigger houses in the slums. Dark clouds started covering the sky as they approached the house. Yura knocked on the door with a cadence of 7 knocks. 2 claps were heard from the other side of the door before it opened. The woman who opened the door was a shorter, more stout, elderly lady wearing a long purple cardigan. "What brings the wonderful Shim siblings to my home?" she asked with a wide smile. "Granny Nara, we need your help," Yuta calmly answered. Nada stepped aside to let Yuta and Hyunu into her home. The two walked in as if they knew the lay of the house, but with mild nervousness. "You two kiddos need my help? What are you scheming now?" Nada asked with a sly smirk. "You're going to love this, Granny," Hyunu excitedly said as he sat on the plush leather couch. "We've got a plan to infiltrate the fancy ball at the castle next month." Nada clapped her hands eagerly as she sat down on her big cozy rocking chair. "The ball for the Princess Bride selection? That sounds like fun!" "Fun is an understatement," Yuta sarcastically replied as she sat next to Hyunu on the couch. "I have been volunteered by the two stooges to be the one infiltrating." "Well, you are the best at those types of things," Hyunu stated. "He's right," Nada replied with a nod of agreement. "You've always been exceptional when it comes to infiltrating. So what role are you going to play? Server? Bodyguard? Candidate?" Nada's eyes widened in shock. Her expression was far from disappointed. Surprise and excitement washed over her expression. "Even better, my dear! You're going to need to get cleaned up pretty good if you're going to have a chance at infiltration." Yuta sighed. "Getting cleaned up is not really my thing." "That's why I'll be contacting my grandchildren to help you. You're going to need all the help you can get." Nada stood up and walked to the corner of the room with a quiet caged bird. She grabbed a pen and paper and wrote quickly. She attached the paper to the bird and sent it off through the window. "One of them should show up at your door within the next day or two. We only have 3 weeks." Yuta watched Nara walk around the room carefully. Plans were being set into motion. This was the only way they can follow through with their scheme. But why was she growing more nervous by the second? Sometimes words are hard, okay? Also, Granny Nara is one of my favorites. The sun set on an average day at the castle. Seungmin walked out of the meeting hall. He sat through boring meetings about the upcoming ball. As he walked through the castle halls, he crossed paths with several men from the military unit. Thinking nothing of it, he continued walking. Military business was not his specialty. A few minutes later, relief took over him as he stepped foot in the east wing. "Prince Seungmin, that is not the way to the kitchen," Mino calmly stated as Seungmin walked past him. Mino chuckled to himself as he closed the door to the wing and followed Seungmin. "I'll go fetch food for you in a bit." "I'm not hungry," Seungmin simply replied as he walked into the sitting room and fell onto the couch. "You should eat, though," Mino suggested as he stood by the couch where Seungmin was. "In the meantime, how about you tell me how your day was?" Seungmin looked up at Minho with a glare. "Ew. I don't want to talk about my feelings. You're not my therapist." "Shit, I might as well be," Mino muttered under his breath. "I've been by your side for a long time. If anything, we're each other's therapists." "For a prince's servant, you sure are buddy-buddy with me," Seungmin said as he cracked a small smile. "You wouldn't want it any other way," Mino replied with a laugh. "So, did the king do something again?" Seungmin shook his head. He sat up on the couch and looked at Mino. "It's more stupid preparations for that damn ball." "I don't want to plan the ball. I don't want to get married, and I especially don't want to be a prince." Mino nodded as he listened intently. "I keep telling you, we can pack up and run away. I know Chan's on board, Changbin might be too. Hyunjin acts reluctant, but he's ready to go at a moment's notice." Seungmin sighed. Princely duties were thrown at him left and right ever since he was little. He grew to hate them as the time passed. Mino was the best guard anybody could ask for. Mino sees what has been happening, but he cannot bring himself to up and leave. I'll go get some food, Mino said as he left the room, leaving Seungmin alone with his thoughts. Seungmin stood up and walked to the window. The room in the east wing had a full view of the courtyard. Orange painted the skies as the sun was setting for the day. He watched a group of military men march through the courtyard. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Seungmin knew about the treaty with a few neighboring kingdoms. Maybe they were on their way to those kingdoms. His thoughts took him to that day in the town. That group of bandits. What were they called? Veritas bandits? There were only 3 of them, but the one he made eye contact with stood out to him. He walked to the bookshelf and found a particular book. It was a journal written by his sister. Opening the book, he found a random page and started to read one of the passages. I snuck out again today. Nobody noticed. Go figure. In town, everyone was so nice to me. I also ran into a group of bandits. They called themselves Veritas bandits. Veritas meaning truth. They don't seem too bad. Any place they robbed, they exposed the wrongdoings of the shop owners. Why hasn't father done anything about this? These bandits look so young, too. Maybe my brother's age. Maybe I should join them? I really want to leave. Maybe I should talk to father about this? No. Tonight My prince, I've brought you food, Mino playfully called out as he carried in a tray of food. Seungmin jumped as he closed the journal. Thank you, Mino, he softly said. Mino set the tray of food down at the table and looked at Seungmin. You're not reading anything dirty, are you? Seungmin scoffed and placed the book on the shelf. No, prude. I ought to fire you. You won't. You love me too much. Seungmin took a deep breath and exhaled dramatically. I hate it when you're right. He walked to sit down to eat the small bit of food Mino brought. That book was my sister's journal. She wrote about those bandits we ran into the other day. The guys who exposed those money launderers? Mino asked as he sat down opposite Seungmin. Bandits pop up all over the place. It's impressive your sister has seen them. She ran away 5 years ago. That journal entry was right before she ran. There was also a comment saying they might be around my age, Seungmin replied. So you're in love with one... Ugh. So you in love with that one bandit? Mino smirked, leaning back in his seat. Don't worry, Prince Seungmin. Your secret is safe with me. Shut it. Fine, but can you tell me any new information on what the king is planning for that ball? Any ideas on who the candidates are? Mino asked. Mino, you of all people should know I'm not interested. I'll pretend to care and find someone, I guess. Mino observed Seungmin's sullen expression. He decided not to question any further and let him eat his food. Veritas being true just reminds me of Kagumin's plan. Yeah. I mean, hey, gotta explain things somewhere. Also, I feel like the pairing of Mino and Seungmin is super underrated. That's just saying. Yura begrudgingly walked to the door and opened it. On the other side was a man and a woman of short stature. The woman stood roughly the same height as Yura, while the man was 6 centimeters taller. They were both dressed like they belonged to a noble family. Are you Shimura? The man asked politely. I am, Yura answered. Her expression soured slightly as she looked over the two. She noticed the bags they were carrying, and they looked fancy. Our grandmother sent us here to prepare you for the ball. We have brought gifts, the woman said with a wide smile. She then held up a bag and walked into the house. You mean you can't just walk into a stranger's house? The man scolded as he showed Yuta an apologetic look. Changbin, relax. It's not like this is the first time we've done this. The woman, Yubin, casually replied as she threw the bag onto the couch in the living room. The man, Changbin, sighed and turned to Yuta. I am so sorry about her. Name's Changbin. That's Yubin. Grandma said you needed assistance with becoming a bridal candidate for Prince Seungmin. Yuta crossed her arms with a contemplative expression. As much as I don't want to, I have to. So what do you have? She asked, walking towards the living room. Changbin followed carefully and helped Yubin sort out the contents of the bag. There were various colored fabrics being pulled out of each of the bags. If you're going to be a bridal candidate for the prince himself, you'll need to look the part. A lot of these women are a part of noble families, so they'll be wearing expensive dresses. We don't have a lot to work with, but these fabrics were the best I can do in such short notice. Yubin rambled on while she held up different pieces of fabric to Yuta. Yuta looked over at Changbin with a panicked expression. Changbin only shrugged. She's always like this. Can't help you. Yuta sighed as she let Yubin wrap fabric upon fabric all over her. Luckily, Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo were out of the house for the day. She would not hear the end of it if they were home. Purples and blues flashed through her peripherals as Yubin moved fabric effortlessly. Yuta released another sigh. Can you really make a dress in 2.5 weeks? She asked. Honey, I've done more in less time. Yubin immediately answered. She then pulled out another colored fabric and held it up to Yuta. Yubin's expression immediately changed and motioned for Changbin to look. Changbin looked at the fabric, then at Yubin, and gave a nod of approval. Yubin smiled as she set the fabric down and grabbed a tape measure. She took Yuta's measurements with ease and wrote them down. So why are you interested in becoming a bridal candidate? Changbin asked. All Grandma told us was that you were in desperate need of a dress. Yuta thought carefully on how to answer that. There is something I need to do for my own benefit. This is the only way I can accomplish that, she simply answered. Changbin nodded in understanding. I'll put in a good word for you. We used to work at the castle a few years ago, so I know the prince fairly well. You know the prince? Yuta asked in shock. Would you like me to put in a good word for you? Changbin asked back. He watched Yuta's body language carefully, almost feeling something familiar. Maybe. Just don't mention my name at all, Yuta answered reluctantly. She waited patiently for Yubin to finish her work. All right, we are done. Me or Changbin will come back with the dress when the dress is finished, Yubin said with a bright smile. And don't worry about the style. I already have a vision for you, my dear. Yuta's expression morphed into a questionable frown. Yubin appeared oblivious to the expression while Changbin laughed out loud. Thank you for your time, Yuta, Changbin gently expressed as he and Yubin left the house. Yuta watched the door close and released the biggest sigh of her life. The nerves piled up more as each day progressed. The plan had to go off perfectly. It has to. Thanks for the knock sound effects. Thank you. I do my best. I do my best. Chapter 4. Look for red. This one's a bit of a long one, so buckle in. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. This one's a bit of a long chapter, so here we go. Buckled. Let's go. Minho paced around the room calmly, but at the same time, nervously. Seungmin has yet to be seen, and the afternoon crept up on everyone. He was waiting in a waiting room along with several maids. Anxiety filled the maids as they were waiting for the prince to arrive so they can prepare him for the ball. Minho, are you sure he'll be here? Leah, one of the maids, asked frantically. I can't answer that in good faith, Minho immediately replied. It's not helping, Leah said with a pout. The king instructed us to prepare the prince for the ball, and we can't do that if he doesn't show up. Eugene spoke up with a much harsher tone than Leah. Mino glared at Eugene. Before he can speak any more, the door opened, revealing an unexpected king. "Where is my son?" Jungmin asked after one glance at the room and finding Sunmin missing. "I have not seen him since this morning, Your Majesty," Mino politely answered with a small bow. Jungmin looked perplexed. "That's odd. Today is the big day. I'm surprised he is not here yet. Mino, what was the last thing he did and where was he?" "Last I saw him was when we had breakfast together in the East Wing. After that, he told me he would meet me at the waiting room by the ballroom. And that was 8 a.m., Your Majesty," Mino answered truthfully. "You better not be chickening out. We spent so much time and money on this ball," Jungmin muttered. "If he does not show his face in the next hour, then I will find him myself." Everyone felt fear as Jungmin spoke. Mino felt worry over the prince's whereabouts. Luckily, his worry washed away when Sunmin entered the room a few moments later. All of the maids rushed to him and pulled him to the chair to fix his hair. Jungmin stood behind the maids and scolded Sunmin. "Where have you been?" His booming voice echoed through the room. Sunmin sighed as Eugene and Leah fussed over his hair. "I was doing some reading and lost track of time. My apologies, father," he answered, feeling uninterested in anything. "Are you sure you weren't talking to those low-life bums?" Jungmin asked. "Your image as a prince is valuable. You shouldn't be seen with those ruffians." "It's not like they live in the slums," Sunmin quietly mumbled. Jungmin narrowed his gaze towards Sunmin. Deciding arguing was not worth it, he turned around and left the room. Everyone released their internal tension when the door shut. The maids continued their work, trying desperately to ignore how uninterested the prince was. Mino walked up to them with a knowing expression. "I know you were talking to Chan and Changbin." "And?" Sunmin shot back. "Still planning you know what?" Mino asked with a small nudge. Sunmin glared at Mino. "I told you I'm still thinking about it, but that's not what we talked about." He took Mino's curious look as a sign to continue. "Chan did offer, but Changbin said something that seemed a little off even for him. He said, 'Look for red,' and I've got no clue what that means." "Maybe he knows something," Mino replied with a shrug. "His grandmother used to work as the royal family seamstress. I could see him knowing something about the ball." "Didn't she disappear years ago?" Eugene asked as she was putting the finishing touches on Sunmin's hair. "I heard rumors she was banished after an affair was discovered," Leah replied as she sprayed hairspray on a fair bit of Sunmin's hair. The two looked at Sunmin's slick-back hairstyle. Eugene took it upon herself to pull out a few strands to complete the look. Two ladies nodded in approval and motioned for Mino to take him to put his suit on. Mino pushed Sunmin behind the barrier where the white and gold suit hung on the wall. Sunmin sighed as he started undressing. Odd feelings began to bubble up as he put on the suit one piece at a time. His father's words bugged him. Why did he seem so concerned about these lowlifes he was friends with? His father appeared standoffish when it came to the lower rank of his people. Maybe he was just busy with the military alignment with the neighboring kingdoms? "You dressed yet?" Mino asked, breaking Sunmin out of his thoughts. "Just a second," Sunmin replied as he threw on the white suit jacket with small red accents. Sunmin looked in the mirror and took in his appearance. White suit with gold accents complemented his dark slick-back hair. He looked the part of the Crown Prince of Arya. So why did he feel so empty? He walked out from behind the barrier and was welcomed by Mino whistling. "Looking good, my prince," Mino playfully called out. Sunmin rolled his eyes. "Don't you need to get ready too?" he asked. "I'll do that later, but right now you need to head to where your father is," Mino directed as he walked with Sunmin to the ballroom. Sunmin groaned as he walked with Mino. All he wanted was for the day to be over already. What about the hairspray? What about the hairspray? They're royalty. They can do whatever they want. An invention in this world? Yeah. Hairspray exists. I mean, I created this world. I can do anything I want. Some setting details? No worries. I need to fix my earbuds. Just a fair warning, ads are coming up in about a minute and a half. So just a fair warning. They always happen during the fun stuff. I could always snooze them. I could do that. We'll see where we are in a second. Are we ready? Yuta asked as she looked at Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo. The three nodded in understanding as she shifted the bags in each of their hands. The ball's in an hour. That should be plenty of time to get everything ready, Taehyun said as he looked at his watch. Do we remember the signal? Yuta asked. She wanted to cover all the bases. It's the same one we've used for years. We'll be fine, Hyunwoo answered. So we cross the border of the slums into the castle, and that's when we'll get Ani ready? Jiwoo asked. Yuta nodded confidently. You got it, Jiwoo. Jiwoo nodded back as the four of them started walking towards the gate. They used their stealth to avoid any royal guards or military. Yuta took note on how there were more military men out tonight than any other night in recent weeks. Hyunwoo looked at Yuta carefully. More with Lyrica? He asked. I would imagine so, Yuta replied. She motioned for everyone to follow her through the alleyway behind a small building. Taehyun removed a small slab of wood from the fence and directed the others to enter the pathway. After making sure everyone cleared the fence, Taehyun followed suit and covered the open spot. The group found themselves in a grassy field with thick tree coverage. Yuta opened one of the bags as Jiwoo walked towards the road in hopes to search for something. Taehyun and Hyunwoo stood guard while Yuta changed into a gown provided by Yubin and Changbin. The dress was slightly more complicated to put on than she anticipated, but managed not to ruin it. Hyunwoo? Yuta asked as she turned her back to her brother. Hyunwoo quickly turned and zipped up the dress. After double-checking the dress, Yuta decided it was time to leave. Is our ride here? She asked Jiwoo. Jiwoo nodded as she pointed to a small carriage moving in the open pathway. The four ran to catch up to the carriage. Yuta fell slightly behind, but with a strong leap, she managed to grab the back of the carriage. Jiwoo helped Yuta into the carriage proper and turned to the coachman. I owe you one, Lily, she said to her. Lily turned back and showed a brief smile before returning to guiding the horses towards the castle. It should be about 10 minutes before we arrive, she called out. Taehyun looked at his watch and nodded. We should arrive right at the beginning. Yuta, remember what to do? Yuta internalized her thoughts for a few moments as Jiwoo looked over her makeup. The closer they were to the castle, the more her heart raced. This mission was different. It was do or die. She nodded in response to the question. Too many of us have lost loved ones due to this insane war. The royal family must be stopped. I'm right there with you, Jiwoo confidently said with a nod. My dad recently died in this stupid war. The royal family needs to pay. The four nodded in agreement with one another. Time flew by in an instant, and they arrived at the castle town. Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo gave Yuta pats of encouragement before jumping off near empty buildings. Yuta released a sigh. She fiddled with the curls of her hair as the carriage quickly approached the castle. Several other carriages were stopped with noble women being helped out of them. In a few moments, Yuta would be completely out of her element. For everything she stood for, She had to put her pride aside for one night. The carriage stopped in front of the castle, and Lily helped Yuta out of the back. She gave a small bow before leaving. Yuta looked at the castle with awe. She had seen the castle close up so many times, but this was the first time inside its walls. Taking her first steps towards the doors, she was met with a few guards. "You must be the last candidate," one of the guards bowed politely. "This way, my lady." Yuta smiled politely as she walked carefully with the guards. They took her through the halls into the big ballroom. The room was illuminated with golden lights, giving a magical feel. Music from a string band filled the entire room as they strived to give a cozy atmosphere. The effort put into the event was not unnoticed. Many of the women wore dresses with wide ranges of colors, from blues to purples to golds and silvers. The women looked beautiful. Yuta briefly looked down at her red shimmery ball gown with gold accents. Her hair was neatly curled and pulled over her left shoulder. She looked elegant, but she felt like an outcast. Swallowing her pride, she meandered around in hopes to find what she was looking for. Across the ballroom, Seungmin stood near one of the fountains. The gold on his suit glistened under the lights. Many women started to approach him, but his cold demeanor pushed them away. Mino approached Seungmin after a woman with an extravagant blue gown walked away irritated. He chuckled at the reaction and nudged Seungmin. "How's it going, Mr. Bachelor?" Seungmin groaned. "Ugh, no." "That good?" Mino asked with a laugh. He brushed off his simple black suit and shifted his stance. "Many women probably did unspeakable things to have a chance to be your bride, and yet you're brushing them off. All their efforts have gone to waste." "I do feel bad about their wasted efforts, but I have my reasons for not wanting to marry," Seungmin explained. "I'm only here to entertain the audience. Nothing more, nothing less." "You don't have to explain anything to me," Mino said as he looked around the room. The two watched as the people mingled. Bright colors of the suits and dresses danced under the lights. One color flashed quickly in Seungmin's field of vision. He remembered what Changbin told him. Look for red. An elegant red dress with flashes of gold caught his attention. Mino noticed Seungmin's expression change. Smirking to himself, he gave Seungmin a light push towards the woman in the red dress. Seungmin glared at Mino before leaving his feet to take him to the woman. Footsteps glided to her effortlessly, while his hand reached up to gently tap her shoulder. The woman turned around and looked at him with a gorgeous pair of hazel eyes that matched the golden lights of the ballroom. Seungmin briefly froze before holding out his hand. "Dance with me," his voice commanded. The woman stared at him for a few moments. Showing a soft smile, she reached out and grabbed his open hand and let him lead her to the dance floor. "To what pleasure do I owe the crown prince for this dance?" the woman asked with a soft smile. "Your name," Seungmin bluntly replied. The woman scoffed. So straightforward. "Shim Yuta, your highness." Seungmin looked at Yuta with a blank expression. His right hand placed gently on her back while her left felt heavier on his shoulder. Their locked hands felt nervously warm. He took note of her body language. "Lady Yuta, you seem nervous," he calmly stated. Yuta nervously chuckled. "I apologize. This is my first time to an event like this," she replied. "I've been so busy focusing on the war, I don't think about events like these." "War?" Seungmin tilted his head in confusion. "You must be from a neighboring kingdom. Is there a civil war somewhere?" It was Yuta's turn to tilt her head in confusion. She quickly shook her head to skirt past the topic. "Sorry, didn't mean to bring up such a topic. May we talk about something else?" Seungmin nodded as he carefully led her around the dance floor. "My apologies, Lady Yuta. That was insensitive of me. If I may, what brought you here tonight?" Yuta appeared to be in deep thought. I am here for more personal matters. I apologize if it's not to your liking in your quest for a bride. No, you have nothing to worry about, Seungmin quickly spoke. Your matters are your own. I respect that. Actually, I have my own matters to attend to. He let go of Yura and gave her a courteous bow. Over there, you'll find my assistant. Stay with him until I return. Seungmin walked away, leaving Yura by herself on the dance floor. The brief conversation triggered bubbling rage within her. Did the Crown Prince really not know about the war in his own country? Did he really blow her off for other matters? Questions flew chaotically in her mind. It's now or never, she thought as she followed Seungmin. She noticed the eyes of his assistant, but she paid him no mind. She was on a mission, and she had to fulfill it. Brushing past a server, she quietly grabbed 2 empty champagne flutes. Windows revealed the pathway she needed to escape. She had her plan. Still holding the flutes, she quickly ran up to Seungmin and pulled him by the shoulder. Can I help you? The tenants of the party quieted down and turned their attention to where the glass shattered. Gasps echoed as they saw the terrifying scene. Yura held a broken piece of glass by Seungmin's neck as she gathered everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention, Yura confidently called out to everyone. The kingdom of Arya has been in disarray for years. Nobody knows the devastating wrongdoings that are happening right under your noses. I am Shim Yura, leader of the Veritas Bandits, and I vow to unveil the truth about the kingdom. She shifted the glass to barely graze Seungmin's neck. The truth needs to unravel before your precious crown prince returns to you. As the royal guards bolted for Yura and Seungmin, Yura smirked while pulling a bag filled with smoke balls from a strap underneath her dress. She threw the entire bag towards the bottom of the stairs. Plumes of white smoke consumed the ballroom. Guards were frantically searching for Yura and Seungmin, but the search ended as the southern glass window broke and flashes of red and white flooded through the broken glass. After them! Yura smirked as she easily pulled Seungmin along. She ran towards a rogue carriage that was waiting for her. She ignored Seungmin's plights of confusion and anger. Guards followed them quickly, but Yura was quick to shake them off. She threw Seungmin into the carriage before throwing around a few guards. Hurry it up, Nuna! Yura swiftly kicked the closest guard before running to jump onto the carriage. The moment she was on, the carriage moved recklessly fast. Yura released a sigh of relief once the guards were out of sight. Would somebody please tell me what's going on? Seungmin complained. Instead of an answer, Yura hit him in the neck to make him pass out. Apologies, Princey boy. We've got things to take care of, she spoke to an unconscious Seungmin. You still sure about this, Nuna? Hyunwoo asked as he looked at Seungmin with pitiful eyes. Yuna sighed as she mirrored Hyunwoo's look of pity. We're in too deep to turn back now. This prince is dumb. Oh, just you wait. Just you wait. Oh boy. She lost them or she literally threw them off? Yes. Imagination. The answer is yes. He gets dumber. I mean, I say just you wait. It gets answered. We're at chapter 5. Chapter 5. Questions. Seungmin woke up to muffled arguing. He slowly opened his eyes and found himself in a strange room. Barren walls and minimal decorations painted the room with simplicity. He slowly sat up and noticed he was in a smaller bed than he was used to. The blanket covering him was completely unfamiliar. Panicking, he threw the covers off his body and jumped out of bed. Arms and legs feeling cold, he noticed the change of clothes. He was dressed in a worn-out shirt and loose pajama pants. What in the world happened? He asked himself as the muffled arguing continued. He looked around the room more and noticed his suit was missing. Without thinking too much, he left the bedroom and noticed the voices were coming from downstairs. He snuck down the stairs and learned what the voices were arguing about. Have you even thought about what we're going to do now? Taehyun asked, throwing the question to Yuta. There was one thing he said to me last night that's been bugging me. I want to ask him about it, Yuta answered. Hyunwoo shook his head at the reply. He probably won't talk considering, you kidnapped the Prince of Arya. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not already on the wanted list, Taehyun added with a chuckle. Veritas bandits as a whole are already on a watch list. It wouldn't surprise me if the wanted list is already updated, Yuta replied. So, what are you gonna ask the prince? Jiwoo simply asked. Yes, what are you gonna ask me? The four froze as their attention turned to the victim they kidnapped, standing atop their stairs. Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo were too stunned to speak while Yuta walked up to him and stood confidently. I don't believe you're in any position to be asking such of me, Yuta told him. Seungmin scoffed loudly. Judging by this house, I take it you're of no status to be asking me anything, and I demand you take me back to the castle immediately. No can do, sir, Yuta replied with a smirk. By the looks of it, you're not looking so princely at this current second, so I'd watch your words if I were you. Seungmin looked down at his less than extravagant wardrobe and groaned begrudgingly. I demand for you to explain what exactly happened. He raised his voice with a command. Our amazing leader kidnapped you, and we're holding you hostage, Taehyun replied with a smile. Yuta rubbed her forehead with one of her hands, clearly annoyed with the answer. Not exactly how I would have worded it, but the gist is there. Your entire intention was to kidnap me? Seungmin asked, annoyance bubbling up within him. Yes, got a problem with it? Yuta replied as she crossed her arms in mild annoyance. Of course I have a problem with it. You kidnapped a prince, Seungmin aggressively stated. I have my reasons, Yuta replied in an equal manner. Trumpet horns blared outside, interrupting the argument between Yuta and Seungmin. Taehyun looked out the window and back at Yuta in fear. They're here again, he told her. Yuta tensed up as she tried running out the door. Taehyun ran after her. Hyunwoo released a defeated sigh, and Jiwoo felt herself grow nervous. Seungmin was left confused. Those trumpets were from the royal guard. He looked at Hyunwoo and spoke. You, tell me what's going on. Hyunwoo looked at Seungmin with a dumbfounded expression. They're your royal guards, aren't they? You should know why they're here. I am not playing games. Tell me what's going on, Seungmin demanded, albeit more frantically than before. Hyunwoo flinched and leaned back slightly. Jiwoo picked up on the tone and stood up and walked up to him. She bowed her head slightly. I am sorry, Prince Seungmin. The Royal Guard stops here once every 4 weeks for mandatory military enlistment. It's to help fight the war with Lyrica, she calmly explained. Seungmin stared at her with confused eyes. We're not in a war with Lyrica. Actually, it's the opposite. We've had a treaty with them for years. Hyunwoo's and Jiwoo's expressions dropped upon hearing Seungmin's words. The two quickly ran out of the house in hopes to catch Yuta and Taehyun. Seungmin, still confused, found a pair of shoes to slip on and followed after them. Soft raindrops coated the dirt roads as several people outside ran around in panic. Seungmin found Hyunwoo and Jiwoo and ran after them. The trumpets were still blaring as people gathered to protest. He looked around and finally put together where exactly he was. Arriving at the open square of the slums, he witnessed several adult men voluntarily surrendering themselves. He watched in confusion as mentions of war were spoken. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Yuta run into the people to try and stop them. She pleaded hectically with the men standing before the guards. Before the guards recognized her, Taehyun ran up to her and pulled her away, followed by Hyunwoo and Jiwoo putting space between her and the guards. Seungmin watched helplessly as the three of them drug Yuta back out of the square. He made eye contact with Hyunwoo for a brief moment before following them back to their home. What exactly was going on? Castle walls echoed with mumblings of panic. After the previous night's events, the castle was put on high alert. Several guards and maids were running amok through the castle. In the east wing, several of Seungmin's personal maids walked in the somber atmosphere. Checking the main sitting room, Minho checked the bookshelf. He remembered Seungmin mentioning a journal his sister wrote about the bandits. Maybe something could be found there? Frantic footsteps rapidly approached the sitting room. Minho, is what I'm hearing true? Minho turned to the man who ran into the room, completely out of breath. Surprised I let you in, Chan, Minho simply stated. I don't need the sarcasm, I just need to know if Seungmin really did get kidnapped, the man, Chan, asked. Some woman in a red dress grabbed him, made a whole announcement, and took off with him. Nobody has been able to find him since last night, Minho simply explained. Chen walked up to Minho while running a hand through his messy curls. He stood close in height to Minho, but wearing something more akin to a commoner compared to Minho. We always talked about taking him out of here. Didn't think somebody would beat us to it, Chan thought out loud. His gaze shifted to the bookshelf and mindlessly grabbed one and looked through it. Have you heard of the Veritas Bandits? Minho asked as he found a worn-out journal. I've heard the name float around. They're the ones causing trouble in Castletown, right? Chan answered. Right. The lady that kidnapped the prince claimed she was the leader of the Veritas Bandits. To think these pesky bandits were capable of such high-stakes crimes. Minho spoke his thoughts as he skimmed through the journal. Before the ball, I talked with Seungmin briefly about those bandits. We ran into them one day. He seemed intrigued by them, although he will never tell you that. I think this was the journal he mentioned his sister wrote. She also ran into those bandits. Chen listened intently as he looked over Minho's shoulder and read some of the passages in the journal. His sister ran away 5 years ago, but her writings remain here. What else was here? He thought out loud. Minho flipped through the pages and Chen stopped him on one of them. What's this? Minho hummed in curiosity as they read the passage. I need out. I tried leaving, but Father stopped me. He told me something very frightening. He was out and about when he was deploying recruitment guards. Father was up to something, and I don't want to stick around to find out. What on earth was going on here? Minho asked out loud after reading the passage. We can do some digging around here and find out, Chan suggested with a smirk. Before Minho could agree, heavy footsteps approached the room. Quickly, they realized the footsteps belonged to the king. Good afternoon, boys. How are you two doing? Jungmin asked with a smile. Minho quickly closed the journal and hid it among the stack of books. We're doing all right, sir, he nervously answered. I'm sure Shock is still there. We'll get my son back in due time. I've already deployed guards to search all of the town. Those bandits will be brought to justice, Jungmin confidently stated as he looked around the room. Chan and Minho exchanged nervous looks. Something felt off, but they could not place the feeling. Silently communicating, they decided to discreetly take the journal and find out more information on their own. Ow. What the hell are you doing? Yuta shouted at Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo sighed as everyone returned to the house. Princey boy told us some very important information, and you really need to hear it, he told Yuta as he pushed her onto the couch. Yuta looked up with a bitter expression. Jiwoo, Hyunwoo, and Taehyun circled around Yuta. Seungmin read the room carefully. He was confused himself. Hyunwoo nodded to Seungmin, urging him to tell Yuta the information he was told earlier. Seungmin released a sigh. I need you to tell me what is going on here first, he calmly commanded. Yuta looked up at Seungmin with a glare. You should know. There's no way you can be completely unaware of the war going on with Lyrica. You played dumb at the stupid ball, and you're playing dumb now! She snapped as she stood up and tried to get in Seungmin's face. Seungmin's face contorted into an expression of annoyance. He peered down at Yuta due to the height difference. I don't know because there is no war. My father signed a treaty with Lyrica 15 years ago. Arya and Lyrica have been on good terms for years, he explained while glaring at Yuta. Confusion, anger, and dread painted Yuta's expression. You're lying. There's no way. If there is a treaty, then explain why the military comes here all the damn time to send people to their deaths, she asked while raising her voice. I am just as confused as you are about this, Seungmin shot back, voice matching Yuta's. You're the damn prince! You should know what the hell is going on in your own damn kingdom! Yuta yelled as she stepped closer to Seungmin, where their bodies were touching. Hyunwoo pulled the two apart before either Seungmin or Yuta could initiate any violence. Yuta, that's enough! He yelled at her. He pushed her by her shoulder and got in her face. We can process everything later. You need to cool down, Nuna. No! He needs to tell me what's going on now! Yuta argued as she fought Hyunwoo to get closer to Seungmin. Yuta, please, calm down, Taehyun pleaded. Calm down? We've been dealing with this war for years. We've had family that has lost their lives in this dumb war, only for the Crown Prince to tell us there never was a war? This doesn't make any sense! Yuta snapped as she slammed her fist on the back of the couch. Again, I am just as confused as you are. If you would let me explain, I think we can figure out what could be going on, Seungmin calmly said. He took a cautious step towards Yuta, only to be met with an aggressive sidestep. Yuta sighed as she quickly walked upstairs. Hyunwoo let out an exaggerated sigh, while Taehyun and Jiwoo looked at the stairs somberly. Hyunwoo looked at Seungmin with an apologetic look. I apologize on behalf of my sister, he politely said as he bowed. Seungmin shook his head. No need. I need a minute myself to process everything. He nodded his head to Hyunwoo. He walked to the back door and stepped outside. Hyunwoo, Taehyun, and Jiwoo looked at one another as they felt the awkward atmosphere overtake the house. They kidnapped Prince Seungmin to find answers, but they were left with more questions. Whichever one. Six. Chapter 6. Searching for Answers. Late into the night, Mino and Chan roamed around the main part of the castle. They met up with Hyunjin, and the three of them started their own mission to figure out why the king was acting the way he was. The three snuck around the main halls of the castle to find their way into the history hall. Hyunjin navigated easily through the halls. 2 doors down should be the archives. Maybe we can find something on the king, Hyunjin whispered shouted. Hopefully we can find some information, Chan replied as Mino nodded. Mino watched the halls carefully in order to not be spotted. A few moments later, they arrived at the archive room. Mino carefully picked the lock, and the three of them entered the room. They looked around carefully in the dimly lit room filled with massive bookshelves. Chan grabbed the ladder and started in one section. Mina looked around a smaller bookshelf at the written journals, and Hyunjin looked at the current transaction records. Little by little, they each found an inkling of suspicion in the records. They came together with each piece of their findings. Chan opened the book and he pointed to a specific page. It says here, a treaty with Lyrica was signed 15 years ago. Any other records of other treaties and trade agreements gave specifics in the contracts, like this one with Altone. Conditions of the trade agreement as follows. Dock shall be open at 6 a.m. once a month to drop off Altonian peaches. In return, Aria will bring its finest Arian apples. It's a simple trade of goods. All the other treaties and agreements give specifics on paper, except this one with Lyrica, Chan explained. I know Kim Jungmin is close friends with the king of Lyrica. Maybe they thought they didn't need written records? Mina thought out loud. Or they could have a super secret deal that's totally immoral, Hyunjin exclaimed with a smirk. He laid out a paper of recent transactions in front of Chan and Mino. And what exactly are we looking at here? Mino bluntly asked. He leaned over Chan's shoulder, trying to get a good look at the paper. This is a document of all the funds of the royal family. We can even see notes about the ball yesterday, he said while pointing to the specific transactions. The juicy part is what happens after the ball. There's a suspicious monetary transaction to Lyrica that happened late last night. This appears to be similar to the ones from exactly 4 weeks ago. Chan looked at the documents and noticed a key detail. Every 4 weeks, it's the same transaction. Exactly, Hyunjin nodded in approval. Plus, there's no notes to what these transactions to Lyrica are for. Any other one has some kind of note. Mino looked at the papers and opened the journal in his hands. He pointed to an entry dated 4 weeks ago. Maybe this will help fill in the blanks. Military transactions to Lyrica completed. Lord Youngpil will report in 1 week's time. Why are there military transactions being made when there hasn't been a war in 20 years? Hyunjin looked at the following entry in the journal Mino showed. What's this? He mumbled as he read the passage. My kingdom would hold prestige again. Deciding to call it a night, they carefully placed everything they found back where it belonged and left the room. Questions ran through their minds as they traversed back to the East Wing. One question rang through all three of them. Did Seungmi know any of this? Whew. 1 a.m. An uneasy quietness took over the night. Moonlight peered through the windows, dimly lighting the room. Taehyun sat alone in a bedroom, waiting for something to happen. Hyunwoo walked in the door silently. "Do you make it home safe?" Taehyun asked. "Safe and sound," Hyunwoo answered. "How's the situation with Nuna and Princey Boy?" "Still haven't said a word since this afternoon," Taehyun replied, fiddling with his bracelet. "Prince Seungmin is still out back. I don't think he's eaten much today. I'm a bit worried." Hyunwoo hummed in response. He turned to the bedroom door and cracked it open. "I'll go check on things." He slowly opened the door and found Yura up and walking into the kitchen. Hyunwoo gently followed her and watched her carefully. Yura tiredly sauntered through the kitchen, putting together some kind of snack. She put together a small plate of snacks along with a small cup of juice. Placing them on the kitchen bar, she released a tired sigh. She turned around and jumped slightly upon seeing Hyunwoo. "Who are those for?" Hyunwoo asked, clearly knowing the answer. Yura glared at Hyunwoo before rubbing her eyes. "Which one of us hasn't eaten all day?" she sleepily snapped. That would be both of you, Hyunwoo snarkily answered. Yuta rolled her eyes as she walked to the couch. Before laying down, she looked at Hyunwoo and told him, "Can you bring him inside? He can sleep in my room." Hyunwoo shook his head with a soft smile. He walked upstairs and prepared the room for Seungmin. After 10 minutes, he returned downstairs and noticed Seungmin walking inside. The two made brief eye contact before Seungmin walked towards the kitchen bar. He saw the plate of snacks along with a note that only said, "Princey Boy." The gesture itself seemed nice. Feeling the pain in his stomach, he started eating the snacks. Hyunwoo walked up to Seungmin and leaned on one of the chairs. "Nuna made those for you," he simply told him. Seungmin nodded as he kept eating. He looked around the room and noticed Yuta on the couch fast asleep. Hyunwoo saw where his gaze was. "You'll be sleeping in a room upstairs." Seungmin appeared confused as he finished his snack. "For someone who kidnapped me, you sure are treating me nicely." "You are still the Crown Prince of Aria. You should probably go to bed. It's late, and we have a lot to discuss tomorrow," Hyunwoo calmly replied. He stood up straight and walked to the bedroom door across the living room. Seungmin took in the words he found himself in an unorthodox situation. Noticing the blanket falling off Yuta, he walked over and covered her back up. She looked almost uncomfortable, but her sleeping expression softened up as the warmth of the blanket soothed her. He sighed as he started walking towards the stairs. He returned to the room he woke up in, Yuta's room. Looking carefully at the walls once more, the minimalistic decorations seemed to not fit Yuta's hot-tempered personality. He changed into the sleepwear that was carefully laid on the bed. For being a kidnap victim, he was being treated with some respect. What in the world was going on? Why was he kidnapped? He immediately fell asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. He woke up to the sunlight beaming into the bedroom. Immediately, many questions ran through his mind. All of them were hopefully about to be answered. He climbed out of the bed and noticed clean clothes with a note. "Shower and change. Meeting will begin when you're ready." Seungmin tilted his head as he read the note. He looked around the room and noticed the bathroom door open. Complying with the note, he took a quick shower. The culture shock was still evident with how he handled being kidnapped. He was used to the castle and its vast rooms and showers. The smaller house and rooms felt more homey. Shaking the thoughts, he finished his shower, put on the clean clothes, towel-dried his hair, and headed downstairs. He felt how tense the atmosphere was upon walking into the living room. Hyunwoo, Taehyun, and Jiwoo sat on the couch while Yuta was leaning on the back of the chair with her arms crossed. She nodded her head to the chair on the opposite side of the room. "Take a seat. There's a lot to discuss," Yuta commanded. Seungmin walked over to the chair and sat down carefully. "I've got several questions for you about everything." In case you forgot, I'm the one who kidnapped you. If you know what's best for you, you will listen to my orders." Yuta peered down at Seungmin. Seungmin blankly stared back, but on the inside, he felt threatened. Not very many people could make Seungmin feel this way. "What do you want to know?" he reluctantly asked. Yuta kept her stare at Seungmin. "You said there was no war between Arya and Lyrica. Elaborate." Seungmin met Yuta's eyes. Determination to find the truth was evident in her eyes. 15 years ago, there was a treaty signed between Arya and Lyrica. My father is in good standing with the nobles of Lyrica. I do not know much beyond that. I never took up most of father's duties growing up, so when I say I do not know anything, I really mean it. Yuta nodded as she listened carefully. Tone of voice, body language, and the unwavering look in his eyes told her all she needed to know. "So, everything you said about no war was the complete truth?" "Yes." Yuta huffed out a breath through her nose. She cycled through contemplative looks while thinking of her next statement. If you have no knowledge of the war here, then how do we explain everything that's been happening with us for the last several years? Can you at least explain that to me? Maybe we can piece together what's going on with our respective bits of information, Seungmin calmly reasoned. Yuta wanted to fight, but looks from Hyunwoo, Taehyun, and Jiwoo urged her to play nice. Taking a deep breath, she turned to Seungmin and asked, "What do you want to know?" "What is this war you keep talking about?" Seungmin asked carefully. Around 15 years ago, a war broke out. Royal family guards came to us in the slums to recruit the adult men to go to war with Lyrica. We were all led to believe everyone was fighting for the greater good of the country. Until one night 12 years ago, my father managed to come home, but he was hunted by the royal guards and killed for disobeying orders. He and many others wound up in the same exact situation, Yuta explained. She gently glanced at Jiwoo with sad eyes. That's how Jiwoo came to us. Her father suffered the same fate mine did. We've suspected foul play for a long time, but Jiwoo's story set everything into motion. We want to expose the royal family for their treatment of us during this war. But now that we've learned this war we've been under never existed, this poses a real problem. Seungmin listened intently to Yuta's speech. He picked up on the sincerity of her words. He looked at Jiwoo, who nodded in confirmation with Yuta. There is a war, and there is no war. Both appear to be true at the same time. How do you suppose we find out why that is? He asked. Yuta looked at him blankly. If we're going to fix this problem, we need to find answers. Since I've been kidnapped, I cannot look through the castle records between Arya and Lyrica, so unless somebody knows something in the slums, then we can't move forward with solving this problem. The five of them sat in silence for several moments. Hyunwoo was the one who spoke up. "What about Granny Nada?" he asked. The attention turned towards him. Didn't she used to work at the castle years ago? Maybe she's our only connection to find some answers. Hyunwoo's right, Yuta said with a nod. With sharp eyes, she locked gazes with Seungmin. You and I will pay a visit to Granny Nada. Seungmin felt incredibly nervous. Why did the name Granny Nada sound so familiar? Careful footsteps traverse through the rough dirt pathways of the slums. Yuta walked with ease while Seungmin struggled to keep up. Can you at least slow down? How in the hell do you even walk normally in these roads? Seungmin cursed as he stumbled over a hole in the ground. I dealt with a fancy ball, you can deal with the slums, Yuta simply replied as she leaped over a small hole. Have the slums always been this bad? Seungmin asked himself. He brushed off the dirt off his pants. Yuta loudly sighed. It's the slums. Pretty self-explanatory. Seungmin shook his head. Sorry, he reluctantly muttered. Yuta turned to look back at him. Saw him struggling through the pathway, and slowed her pace. She almost felt bad for Seungmin, but she needed answers, even if it meant using the Crown Prince to get them. A few short moments later, the two arrived at Granny Nada's house. Yuta casually walked up to the door and knocked. Both Yuta and Seungmin concealed their nervousness. They were snapped out of their thoughts when the door opened. Yuta? What a nice surprise! How did the ball go? Nada asked with a smile. It went all right, but we're here to ask a few questions, Yuta answered. Nada smiled while her eyes shifted to Seungmin standing behind her. Her smile never faltered as she welcomed both Yuta and Seungmin into her home. Please, have a seat. I'll get you both some tea. Yuta walked into the house, leading Seungmin to sit on the couch. Seungmin looked around the house and felt a familiar vibe. Why? Something felt off, but he could not figure it out. What would you two like to ask? Nada smiled as she placed 2 teacups on the coffee table. Yuta took a deep breath before mustering up the courage to speak. The words failed to escape her lips as nervousness consumed her. Seungmin noticed and turned to Nada and asked, We've discovered discrepancies with matters involving Arya and Lyrica. Do you know anything about a possible war between the 2 kingdoms? Nada released a hearty chuckle. Yuta and Seungmin showed looks of confusion in response. No need to be so formal with me, Seungmin. I'll answer anything you want. Nada answered with the sweetest smile. Granny, he's the crown prince of Arya. Why didn't you address him properly? Yuta asked. Do you address him properly? Nada shot her response back. After seeing Yuta's scorned look, she turned back to Seungmin. Although I haven't seen you since I was banished from the castle. Banished? Seungmin questioned. Back to the original question, Nada said, ignoring Seungmin's confusion. I do know something about this war with Arya and Lyrica. The fact that it's actually a cover-up for what the king is really doing. Yuta appeared intrigued while Seungmin looked pale. What's the king really doing? Yuta asked. Before I tell you anything, I have to preface that this is a heavy topic. You may walk away angrier or have more questions. If you accept this truth, there's no going back. Nada warned carefully. Yuta and Seungmin felt the tonal shift. They were getting the answers they seek, but will it be worth it? Will it be worth it indeed? Hello, Flowerheart. Hello, hello. Welcome in. Hope you're having a good day. You're losing your mind over it. Oh my goodness. That's crazy. Whichever one. 7? Probably after this chapter we'll take a break. Because after this chapter will put us roughly halfway. Because there are 13 chapters of the story. So yeah, I think... yeah, after 7, we'll be about halfway. 10 chapters? Nice. Yeah. And we're on chapter 7. Chapter 7. The Truth. Overcast skies painted the bustling kingdom of Arya. The castle was bustling with maids and servants doing their jobs. One older woman walked through the halls in a calmer manner than anyone else. Miss Nara, you're wanted in the fabric room. Kim Jungmin demands your expertise. A young man walked up to the older woman. Nara simply smiled at the man. Lord Jinyoung, I have already been made aware of the king's demands. I do not need to be rushed. Jinyoung sighed as he walked away and left Nara alone. Nara huffed out a sigh and walked at her pace through the castle halls. She slowed her speed the closer she was to the fabric room. Taking a deep breath, she entered the room. Kim Jungmin? Nada greeted with a bow. There you are, Lady Nada. Jungmin smiled as he motioned for her to move closer to him. Sorry for rushing. The big trip to Lyrica is next week and we need new suits for the big dinner there. Nara nodded as she looked over at the small child next to Jungmin. She knelt down and smiled at the child. You need a new suit too, Seungmin? Seungmin looked away in reply. Nada smiled sadly while Jungmin nudged the boy. Listen up, my boy. Let's make sure Nada doesn't struggle with making the suits, he said as he stood up and tried to move Seungmin. Let the boy go at his own pace, Nada gently scolded the king. I will have the suits ready before you leave. Let the kid be a kid. Jungmin laughed while he stood up to walk deeper into the fabric room. Nada sighed as she gently urged Seungmin to follow. I don't wanna, Seungmin said with a pout. Prince Seungmin, your father needs to prepare for the trip, and you need to be prepared too, Nada tried to tell Seungmin. Granny Nara, I don't like what father wants me to do. I want to go play with my friends, Seungmin said as he looked at Nada in the eyes. Nada's gaze softened as she talked to him. She smiled after thinking for a moment. Tell you what, after we're done, I have a spare glove in my room you can go grab. Go play with your friends and I'll cover for you. Seungmin smiled brightly from the words. He quietly hopped from his seat and walked to where his father was. Nada giggled as she met up with Jungmin and Seungmin. She started grabbing fabrics to start working on the suits. Carefully following the king's demands, she worked swiftly with fabrics with various shades of blue. After several moments, she finished gathering the measurements and fabrics. Nada laughed as Seungmin ran out of the room quickly. As she folded the fabrics to work on later, she heard heavy footsteps. Lord Jinyoung, what brings you here? Jungmin asked as he met Jinyoung at the door. The deal with Baritona may fall through, Jinyoung said in a panic. They had a scout evaluating Arya and they reported the port area south as a problem. Why is it a problem? They're not part of us. They just happen to exist on our land, Jungmin replied. Baritona will not allow the merge if that part of the kingdom remains how it is. They said it reflects poorly on how we run the kingdom, Jinyoung frantically replied. Nada listened carefully to the conversation. Her expression turned to one of shock upon the next words she overheard. We'll kill most of them and pawn the rest off to some other country. We can't have them slander the good name of Arya. Yes, your majesty. 1 week later, Nada felt uneasy as she paced through the halls. She waited patiently for the king to walk out the doors to leave for Lyrica. She planned to confront him about the slums. Her wishes were answered moments later. The door slammed open and a jovial king walked effortlessly through the halls. Nada jogged up to the king to talk to him. Excuse me, your majesty. I have a concern that needs to be addressed before you go. What is it, Lady Nara? Jungmin asked calmly. I mistakenly overheard a conversation and I have concerns with your potential deal with Lyrica, Nada stated. She confidently stood her ground. If you're going to make a deal to kill innocent lives, I recommend you don't go. Jungmin looked at Nada with sad eyes. Lady Nada, I have no idea what you mean. Instead of killing innocents, how about we send help to the slums? I know I'm just a mere seamstress, but I came from the slums. I know I'm not going to stand for this clear slander, Nada sternly replied. Piercing eyes stared directly at the king. She refused to back down. Jungmin felt the determination from Nada. The two held their stares for several moments. Jungmin sighed before turning his head to Jinyoung. I expect her to be taken care of before I return. Yes, your majesty, Jinyoung simply responded as he grabbed Nada's shoulders and moved her so the king, his son, and the guards can walk to the carriages. Nada shook off Jinyoung's grasp and let out one final statement. This decision will ruin you, King Kim Jungmin. And after that, the guards packed up everything I had and sent me to live in the slums. Nada finished her story with a sad smile. Yuta and Seungmin stared blankly. Both were processing the story in their own way. Yuta felt confirmation in her worries, while Seungmin felt like he was hit by a carriage. He was right. There was no war. But the implications of everything felt sour. His own father would rather kill the residents of the slums than send help to the people. He simply stood up and left the house. Yuta stood up and tried following him. Where are you go? Hold it there, missy! Nada calmly stopped Yuta. While you are right in your feelings of something wrong, he just had his own truth shaken up. He needs time to think. But he's the prince. Shouldn't he be aware of everything going on to take the throne? Yuta argued. Did you not listen to the story? I doubt he changed much since the last I saw him. Nada replied with an indifferent expression. Yuta huffed out a sigh while crossing her arms. Granny Nada worked as a seamstress for the king and knew Seungmin as a child. She should trust Nada's words. Maybe she, herself, thought about everything wrong. The idea to kidnap Seungmin, was it the right thing to do? Nada smiled to herself as she grabbed a piece of paper and a pen. Pirate. She began writing a letter while Yuta slowly left the house. Yuta walked carefully back through the dirt roads of the slums. She collected her thoughts on the walk. After a few minutes, she found Seungmin by the small field. He watched the kids play a game of baseball. Yuta noticed the longing expression Seungmin looked at with the kids. It clicked. Yuta walked up to the kids, brushing past Seungmin. With a bright smile, she tapped one of the kids' shoulders. "Hey, can my friend and I play with you guys?" she asked sweetly. The kids looked at Yuta, then at Seungmin, and smiled. "Sure!" "Do you have any spare gloves we can borrow?" Yuta asked politely. One of the kids handed Yuta 2 baseball gloves. Yuta jogged back to Seungmin and grabbed his arm lightly and tugged him towards the field. She handed him a bigger glove and motioned for him to follow some of the kids. Seungmin snapped out of his daze. He carefully followed the group of kids taking the field. He was brought back to his childhood. No responsibilities, no princely duties, no worries. Yuta's change in attitude threw him for a loop. Deciding not to question anything for now, he went along with the kids and stood in the field. The young kids played their game of baseball with Seungmin and Yuta playing along. Seungmin started to let loose the more kids laughed and had fun. Yuta observed his change in attitude and felt a sense of relief. So he can relax, Yuta thought as one of the kids handed her a bat. She stepped up to the plate and went easy with the kids. The goal was to play and have fun, and she hoped Seungmin could do the same. The kids enjoyed every second of Yuta's and Seungmin's time. The day continued along with the baseball game. Time felt stagnant as the sun set over the slums, casting a golden glow over the land. The kids ran up to Seungmin and Yuta and smiled at them. "Thank you for playing with us today," one of the kids said with a huge smile. Yuta smiled back at the kids. "You are very welcome. Hopefully we can play like this more often," she calmly replied. Seungmin only nodded to accompany her statement. One of the kids walked up to him and gave him a hug. "You're nice, mister. Thanks for playing." A strange feeling of longing washed over Seungmin. He reciprocated the hug gently and replied, "Anytime." Yuta took note of the gesture before leaving the kids to return to Yuta's house. The walk became silent as the tension rose between them. Seungmin seemed in his own world while Yuta pondered on her own thoughts. The two arrived back at the house in a short amount of time. Seungmin immediately walked upstairs while Yuta walked to a bookshelf to look through various folders. Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo watched as they felt the atmosphere in the house drop. Taehyun was the brave one to speak up. "So, what did you find out?" Yuta ignored the question and replied with her own thoughts. "We're scrapping plan appetizer." "Excuse me?" Hyunwoo jumped with an expression of shock. "We worked hard for this plan, and you're just going to scrap it like that?" "We're going with Operation Overcast," Yuta replied, slamming a thick folder on the table. Taehyun and Hyunwoo simultaneously gasped in horror, while Jiwoo appeared confused. "What's Operation Overcast?" she asked innocently. Yuta looked at Jiwoo dead in the eyes as she answered, "We're staging a coup." Well, that's gotta be fun. They're gonna stage a coup. What's gonna happen next? I don't know. But, we're just over halfway through the story. And we're gonna take a break. So we are going to get up, stretch, go to the bathroom, grab a snack, do whatever it is we need to do, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, we are back. We're back. Thank you for all the links, Johnny. And no worries, Time Glitch. Thank you for stopping in, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Alright. There's our question of the day. Perfect timing for it. What do you think of the story so far? You know, we're about halfway. And things are getting interesting. So, what do we think so far? Ow! Whoa. I hate when that happens with my ankle. Sometimes it pops and it really, really hurts and it's really painful. Totally not just like downplaying that. Alright, having a great time? Awesome. Awesome. Alright, chapter 8, Search and Rescue. Your Majesty, are you sure we should be holding a parade next week despite your son's kidnapping? King Jungmin turned to look at Jinyoung, who was frantically looking around the busy hall of the castle. Please, Lord Jinyoung, we have to keep things as they are despite the troublesome current events, he calmly answered before continuing to walk down the halls. But, Your Majesty, the prince has been missing for days now. Have you not taken any measures to find the assailant and bring him home? Jingyan argued as he followed Jungmin. Sungmin will be fine. The assailant was a frail young woman. He's also had defense classes in his teenage years. He'll know how to handle this, Jungmin confidently retorted. Sir, Jinyoung sternly called, your son was kidnapped. Frail young woman or overpowered muscle man, he was taken very easily in front of so many people. He might not be as fine as you think. Jungmin narrowed his eyes at Jinyoung. He held the stare for a few seconds before huffing out an annoyed breath. Fine. I'll send a search party to try and find him. Go find Mino and tell him to put together a squad to search the castle town. The parade will still go on as scheduled. Jinyoung sighed as Jungmin left him to stand there. You are getting too lenient, Your Majesty, he muttered to himself. He swiftly turned around to walk the opposite direction in the halls. After a few minutes, he happened to cross paths with a man whom he sought out. Mino, just the man I was looking for. Mino looked up and locked eyes with Jinyoung. Lord Jinyoung, what do you need from me? The king asked me to have you put together a search party for the prince, Jinyoung answered. His Highness has been missing for days, and now the king wants to send out a search party? Mino rightfully questioned. Don't shoot the messenger, Jinyoung retorted with a scoff. Follow orders, Mino. You got it, Mino sarcastically responded, walking away before he could be berated. Speed walking down the halls, he set himself on a mission to find the few people he trusted in the castle. After making sure nobody was near, he entered the east wing and quickly entered the main sitting room. We've got an update, guys, he immediately said to everyone. Sitting in the room were Chan, Hyunjin, and Changbin. Chan stood up from the couch and double-checked to see if anyone followed Mino. What's the update? Chan asked as he closed the door. Mino joined the others on the couch with Chan not too far behind. King finally decided to send out a search party for the prince, Mino spoke. Finally? Hyunjin dramatically replied. Yes, finally. And Lord Jinyoung decided to put me in charge of it, seeing as I am Prince Sungmin's #1 guy, Mino said, leaning on the couch. Changbin listened carefully. He pulled out a letter that was in his pocket and handed it to Mino. We're in luck, because I know exactly where he is. The guys appeared surprised as they gathered around Mino. Changbin continued speaking while the others read the letter. Grandma sent that to me a couple of days ago. What should we do? After the guys read the letter, Mino turned to Changbin. He's been in the slums this whole time? He asked. I had zero clue things would pan out this way. Yubin and I didn't think she would kidnap the guy, Changbin replied. Wait, you knew who kidnapped the prince? Chan asked, appearing shocked by the information. That dress she wore was a Changbin and Yubin original. Grandma asked us to help her out for the ball as we did. And we did. Both of us never thought Yuta would kidnap the prince, Changbin answered, briefly realizing the minor slip-up. Yuta? Is that her name? Hyunjin questioned as he leaned towards Changbin. Changbin sighed in defeat. Shim Yuta is her name. Grandma told me she's the leader of these bandits and they had a plan for the ball. That's all the information we knew. Bandits? Mino asked, mainly to himself. He thought back to weeks ago when he and Seungmin saw a small group of bandits in the castle town. Wait, I think Seungmin and I had a brief encounter with these bandits. I don't think they're all that bad considering they busted some guys for money laundering. Do you think they're on to the weird things going on with the king? Hyunjin asked. The four men pondered on the question for several moments. With the task of forming a search party, what would they do with all the new information revealed? Sorry, Riley's about done with the food, and I'm gonna get up to put her stuff away real quick, so just enjoy the music real quick. And we're back. Alright. Yuta released a sigh as she walked into her home. Tiredness overcame her after a long morning of putting Operation Overcast into motion. She laid on the couch and stared up at the ceiling. Footsteps echoed throughout the room, but Yuta kept her unbothered stare. "You're home early," Seungmin calmly greeted. Hostile feelings died down more and more the longer his stay was. "When the entirety of the slums refused to listen to you, you'd be home early too," Yuta dryly replied. "What exactly are you telling them?" Seungmin asked. He leaned on the back of the couch and looked down at Yuta. "That they need to pack up and leave or they'll die?" Yuta deadpanned. Seungmin stared at Yuta incredulously. "That's an easy way to scare people. You can't just tell people they're going to senselessly die to get them to do what you want." Yuta sat up with a glare and asked, "How else are you supposed to get people to leave so they'll be safe?" "Not by scaring them," Seungmin replied and scoffed. "While fear-mongering can work in some cases, it would not in this situation when people are needlessly dying regardless." "Then what do you suggest, Princey boy?" Yuta asked with heaps of sass. "It would be much appreciated if you didn't call me that," Seungmin grumbled before standing up straight. "In this particular situation, the truth might work." It was Yuta's turn to stare at Seungmin incredulously. "How in the world is that going to work?" Seungmin sighed as he walked away with a huff. He slipped on a pair of shoes, grabbed Yuta, and left the house with her in tow. Yuta struggled at first to keep up, but she met his stride quickly and followed him to the main square. Many people were at the square, going about their day-to-day lives. Get everyone's attention, Seungmin told Yuta. Yuta seemed surprised by the request. Curiosity filled her mind as she complied with the request. She looked around and found a large tree branch next to a dumpster. With the idea formulating, she walked over and grabbed the branch and hit the dumpster as hard as she could to make noise. The people in the square turned their attention to the noise and took notice of Yuta and Seungmin. Once everyone's attention was on them, Seungmin stood tall and started speaking. This may seem a bit troublesome, but I ask everyone to listen to what we have to say, he called out, channeling his princely nature. I apologize for Miss Yuta's outburst earlier today. This is rather urgent in relation to her statements. Out with it! A bystander shouted. Seungmin glared at the person in annoyance before looking at the rest of the people. I am the Crown Prince of Arya, Kim Seungmin, and I'm here to tell you the king does not see you as his people. Gasps of varying degree echoed through the crowd. Nobody wants to live in a kingdom where your ruler does not care about you. I will strongly advise evacuating before the king does anything drastic. Amongst the chatter, a young girl bravely walked up to Seungmin and Yuta. Where will we go? She asked. Yuta felt a wave of insecurity. They had not discussed where to move the people. What if they could not find the place in time? What if it was too late? What if... We are working to find a suitable location to move everyone. As soon as we have a location, we will spread the word, Seungmin calmly told the little girl. Everyone appeared to relax upon hearing his words. Yuta took notice on how Seungmin commanded the people. Although days had passed since Seungmin had been at the castle, he was still a prince. It was amazing how royalty commanded the people. After seeing the people react calmly to Seungmin's speech, Yuta felt herself relax. One worry was removed. They only need to find a safe location for the people of the slums. But how? Several hours later, Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo arrived back at the house. They found Yuta scrambling in the kitchen as she attempted to cook a big meal. Taehyun immediately sat down at the kitchen bar. Where's Princey Boy? Taehyun blatantly asked. Hyunwoo shoved Taehyun lightly in the arm. Can't you be courteous for once in your life? He asked with an irritated tone. If you must know, he's upstairs. Yuta answered Taehyun's question. I also agree with Hyunwoo. Do it again and no dessert for you. Taehyun pouted while Jiwoo let out a small laugh. Yuta swiftly pulled out 5 plates and set them on the bar. Tae, since you're an inquiring mind, why don't you tell Princey Boy food's ready? Taehyun pouted as the others chuckled while filling their plates. Yuta stood back and watched with a solemn expression. This was one of their last times for a big meal like this. She wanted to take it all in. Yuta snapped out of her thoughts. Nobody visited at this time in the evening. Confused, she walked out of the kitchen towards the front of the door. Feeling irritated and confused, she opened the door to reveal a strange woman. Yuta looked over the woman. She stood a few centimeters taller than Yuta, with long dark hair pulled into a ponytail. Something about her features felt familiar. Can I help you? Yuta asked with clear irritation. The woman looked over Yuta and smiled. You're Yuta, leader of the Veritas Bandits, correct? She asked. Yuta nodded slowly. The woman continued. I'm Kim Sujin. I've been looking everywhere for you. Who are you? Yuta snapped. Sujin wore a look of surprise before shifting to an apologetic one. I am so sorry. We ran into each other 5 years ago. I've been trying to find you for years. News has spread that you're looking to uncover the truth about the Kingdom of Arya. I'm here to aid you. Before Yuta had a chance to reply, footsteps were heard from behind her. The footsteps suddenly froze, causing Yuta to turn around. Seungmin was standing behind her with a shocked expression. Yuta turned back around and noticed Sujin mirrored Seungmin's expression. Turning back to Seungmin, Yuta was about to ask him what was going on. Seungmin ignored Yuta's stern gaze and uttered a name he had not said in years. Sujin Nuna? Dun dun dun. Oh boy. How the turntables. Dropping everything. That's great. Chapter 9. The Same Goal. Silence engulfed the entire house. Everyone was gathered around in the living room, silently eating their food. Yuta, Hyunwoo, Taehyun, and Jiwoo kept glancing back and forth between Seungmin and Sujin. The two greatly resembled one another. One brave soul broke the silence. So, what are you to each other? Taehyun asked. Sujin released a small giggle while Seungmin shook his head. I am the prince's older sister, Kim Sujin. Sujin smiled as she answered the question. Wait, older sister? Yuta asked in confusion. You're the estranged princess of Aria? That would be correct, Sujin replied. You've ran into her before, Seungmin spoke his thoughts out loud. Sujin looked at Seungmin skeptically. He turned to look at his sister. I found your journal at the castle. You wrote about the Veritas bandits 5 years ago. Why are you turning up now? The mood shifted heavily as Sujin appeared somber. I'm here for a few reasons. I caught wind of the bandits kidnapping the crown prince, so I looked endlessly to find you guys. She spoke with a mix of elegance and casualty. I want to help as much as I can. Taehyun, Hyunwoo, and Jiwoo turned to Yuta. The four conversed in a silent conversation. Yuta gave a curt nod as the others turned to Sujin. What are you willing to do to help us? Hyunwoo asked with a stern tone. Sujin looked at the bandits with determination. The people of the slums need a safe place to evacuate to, right? I know of a place they can move to and be safe. Everyone's ears perked up upon Sujin's statement. A location for the people of the slums was what they needed. But could she be trusted? Where are you thinking? Seungmin asked cautiously. A small, quiet village east of here called Pianora. That's where I've been staying for the last 5 years. I can direct the people to the village so they're out of harm's way, Sujin answered. 4 pairs of determined eyes and 1 pair of wary eyes landed on Sujin. Her words felt powerful, but felt too good to be true. This was perfect for Operation Overcast. Why the hesitation? I understand your hesitancy, Sujin spoke, noticing the tension. I didn't think about the logistics. I'm practically a stranger to you all, even to you, Seungmin. While I don't know my father's plans exactly, I do know it's dangerous to all of Aria. I may have abandoned my duties, but I still care about Aria. So, hiding in a village for 5 years shows you care about Aria? Seungmin snapped. I was born the princess. This is still my home. Why is it such a big deal? Sujin defended herself. You said it yourself. You abandoned your duties. Do you know where that left me? You running away left everything to me, and I hated it! Seungmin raised his voice in anger, startling the others. Realizing his rising levels of anger, he quickly removed himself from the living room and ran up the stairs. The bandits looked at one another solemnly. Yuta read the room and stood up, motioning Sujin to do the same. Walking to the door, she said to her, I appreciate your offer to help. You are more than welcome to start the process. But for now, I think it's best you leave. We need to discuss this matter further. Sujin smiled sadly and replied, I'll get right on that. Thank you for your time. Yuta slammed the door quickly after Sujin left the house. Releasing the breath she unknowingly held, she turned around and leaned on the door. Her expression fell as she looked up in deep thought. The mood of the house fell. Sujin, the estranged princess of Arya, showed up unannounced to their home, helped with a plan, and riled up Seungmin. Why did he react like that? It was the most emotion Seungmin had shown in the days he spent at the house. Will Princey Boy be alright? Taehyun asked, breaking the silence. He seemed really mad, Jiwoo added. Hyunwoo looked at Yuta. What do we do now? Yuta looked at the three, hiding how upset she was herself. You guys clean up. I'll go talk to him, she softly commanded. The three nodded while Yuta walked slowly to the stairs. She took a deep breath before ascending the stairs. Looking around in the halls, she managed to find Seungmin sitting on the small balcony outside the hall window. Her legs moved automatically as she climbed out the window and sat next to Seungmin. Seungmin looked briefly at Yuta before turning his attention back to the night sky. The two sat in silence for a few moments before Seungmin spoke his thoughts. It's weird to me to see the stars so brightly, he calmly said. Yuta looked up at the stars and noticed how bright they were. You don't see the stars like this? She asked. Seungmin shook his head. There are so many lights around the castle, it's hard to see the night sky for what it really is. I guess that makes sense, Yuta calmly replied. Silence fell upon them for a few more moments. I really would rather have not seen my sister tonight, Seungmin said with a hint of bitterness. Yuta turned to him with a worried look. 5 years ago, she ran away from the castle. By doing so, she left all her royal duties. And guess who got left with them and did not want them? So you feel resentment towards her? Yeah, Seungmin said, barely above a whisper. Yuta thought about his statement for a few moments. Pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. When the last piece fell, she said, You never wanted to be a prince, did you? Seungmin shook his head in confirmation. You never wanted to be a prince, but you still performed your duties for your people. It's not exactly the same, but I can understand, Yuta said. Her tone was not the normal accusatory or defensive one, but a tone of sympathy. Seungmin looked at her with curious eyes and urged her to continue. When my father died, it felt like suddenly I was in charge of the family. I was left alone to take care of Hyunwoo and the rest of the bandits. Being forced to grow up and take care of your family, it's not easy. It's hard to do this on my own. You don't have anybody you can talk to? Anybody to vent to lean on? Seungmin asked. Yuta shook her head. I never wanted my feelings to burn in anybody. I have a reputation to keep. You can talk to me. Yuta snapped her head to look at Seungmin. He looked at her with such seriousness. It almost scared her. Why would I do that? Seungmin let out a light scoff. You just said you understood me, and I understand you. Who better to vent to than somebody who understands you? The two locked eyes for several moments. Yuta looked over his expression and noticed how genuine he looked. His eyes may have a piercing gaze, but they were soft. Seungmin stared at Yuta's hazel eyes. They were not as harsh as they were when he first met her. Her hazel eyes reflected the light of the stars in the sky. Seungmin's next move was instinct. He found himself leaning closer after quickly glancing down at Yuta's lips. Memories of the ball flooded in his mind. He was drawn to the golden glow of her eyes. Gently lifting her chin, he slowly closed the gap. Nuna, someone's at the door. Oh! Seungmin and Yuta quickly pulled away from one another upon hearing Hyungwoo's voice. Attempting to ignore potential embarrassment, Yuta turned to her brother. Who is it this time? She asked, sounding slightly irritated. He said his name's Changbin, and said you guys knew each other? Hyunwoo answered. Both Yuta and Seungmin perked up at the name. Changbin and his sister were the ones who put together my dress for the ball. What's he doing back here? Yuta said. Seungmin turned to look at Yuta. You know Changbin? You know Changbin? Yuta shot back. Changbin is a close friend of mine. And what do you mean him and you being made your dress? Seungmin's eyes filled with fire. Should I let him in? Hyunwoo asked carefully, feeling like he interrupted the moment. Let him in. I'll be down in a moment. Yuta sighed as she stood up and climbed back into the house. Turning to Seungmin, she called out, You might want to come back down too. Seungmin quickly followed suit as he walked with Yuta and Hyunwoo back to the living room. Hyunwoo walked up to the door and opened it, revealing Changbin along with a few others. Changbin immediately darted for Yuta and gave her a hug. Hi! It's so good to see you again! Changbin cheered. Before Yuta had a chance to reply, Seungmin pried Changbin off of Yuta. Was that even necessary? Changbin glared at Seungmin before realizing who he was. His expression changed as he flung himself towards the prince. It is you! He cheered. Seungmin groaned and pushed Changbin off of him. Can we skip the reunion and just explain why you're here? Excuse me. Seungmin commanded. The others accompanying Changbin walked up next to him. One of them the bandits recognized. Yuta walked up to the unknown guests and commanded their attention. Who are all of you and what is your business here? Real bold to address the prince's right-hand man like that. One of the men peered down at Yuta. Seungmin walked up behind Yuta and backed her up. Mino, don't. Mino glanced up at Seungmin, then back at Yuta, and raised his hands in defeat. Chan, Changbin, Hyunjin, and myself were tasked with the search mission for the Crown Prince. We found him, so we'll be on our way, Mino calmly said to Yuta. Absolutely not! Yuta snapped, instinctively holding out an arm in front of Seungmin. The action surprised everyone. Yuta ignored the expressions of everyone and kept a determined glare towards Mino. She kept her stare for a few moments until Mino talked again. We could easily hand you over to the authorities for kidnapping a member of the royal family. I wouldn't be so adamant about this. Dude, we're here to take him far away from here, not bring him to the castle. Ow! Hyunjin casually said before being smacked in the midsection. The bandits perked up upon the slip-up. Wait, what was your plan? Taehyun asked as he approached Hyunjin. Chan stepped up to Taehyun. Okay, what's your plan? He challenged. Hey! Yuta shouted. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at her. She needed to gain control of the situation. Are you saying, in a roundabout way, we have the same goal? Silence fell in the house. Mino decided to be the brave soul to speak next. It would appear that way. We've learned the king is up to some shady things, so we need to get the prince and leave the kingdom. We've learned the shady things that the king has done, Hyunwoo said. We also have a plan in the works, and you guys being here throws a wrench into it. Or maybe, Jiwoo calmly spoke up, it adds to it. Everyone in the house looked at Jiwoo. Ideas began circulating among them. Yuta looked at Seungmin. All thoughts from their private conversation ran through her mind. What would be the best option? The people closest to Seungmin want him out of the castle. The bandits kidnapped the prince, which inadvertently helped his friends. Having formulated a plan, Yuta looked at everyone and said, Operation Overcast will have some small edits. Will you be willing to help us? Also, yes, Hyunwoo, you interrupted the moment. Also, not me getting a call from my good buddy Scam Likely. Don't you hate it when that happens? Chapter 10, Operation Overcast. The cold morning air hit Mino, Chan, Changbin, and Hyunjin as they exited the slums. They were empty-handed in terms of leaving with the Crown Prince. But that was all right. Operation Overcast was set into motion. So, what is it she told us to do when we got back? Hyunjin asked the group on their walk. She told us to spread the word of an attack on the castle, hopefully without alerting the king, Chan answered. She said it needed to be quick because they're going to storm the castle tomorrow, Changbin added. Mino thought about the plan and said, We can tell the maids. They love gossip and are terrified of the king. That's a start. Do you think they could actually do it? Hyunjin asked, lost in thought. Yuta seemed pretty confident. Everyone seemed to believe in her, Chan replied. She managed to kidnap the Crown Prince in front of so many people. I think she has a few tricks up her sleeve. You say that, but this is a much grander scale than kidnapping Seungmin, Mino shot back. If you ask me, she seems a bit in over her head. But we have the same goal, Changbin quickly replied. He turned to look at Mino with a look of seriousness and added, As long as we can reach our goals, everything will be fine. The group released a collective sigh, choosing to believe in the bandits they had only just met. After a few moments of silence, Chan spoke. This is all for Seungmin, he simply stated as they entered the outskirts of the castle town. I hope this will all be over soon, Mino quietly replied as the group maneuvered through the town. Several minutes passed and the group found themselves at the castle entrance. Giving one another a look of determination, they walked in and began with the operation. Mino walked directly towards the maids' room. He did not bother to stop by any of the officials, even when they desperately tried to flag him down. Without knocking, he barged into the room with certain confidence. All of the maids turned around and were shocked to see Mino. Eugene walked up to Mino with a dirty look. Where are your manners? Why the heck are you barging in here without a cut? The castle will be under attack soon. Eugene froze in place along with the other maids. You can't just say things like that. It's true, Mino replied. While we were searching for the prince, we caught wind of a possible attack. Whispers began to echo in the room. Leah walked up to Mino and asked, What should we do? Spread the word, Mino simply stated. Moments before he exited the room, he left behind a simple addition. But do not tell the king. Eugene, Leah, and the rest of the maids stared at Mino as he left the room. They looked amongst themselves while deciding whether or not to trust his words. Hours before Operation Overcast, the bandits waltzed around the house carefully, but with purpose. Preparations for one of the biggest missions in their life took priority over everything. Seungmin watched over Yuta as she laced up a pair of combat boots. He can feel the thick tension, and it made him nervous. Is this normal for you guys? He calmly asked, although feeling the opposite. Yuta looked up at Seungmin. She noticed the anxiety in his eyes, though his expression did not show it. Nodding softly, she answered, Not quite to this grand scale, but the preparation is normal. Taehyun walked through the living room while adjusting his bracelet and leaned on the couch behind Seungmin. You'll get used to it. Remember your role? He asked with a small smile. Stick with you and Hyunwoo. Yes, I remember it, Seungmin deadpanned. Taehyun nodded before moving to grab the hooded cloaks. He tossed one towards Hyunwoo, who was working on his eyeliner. You could have waited till I was done, he grumbled. Do you really think that matters? It's just eyeliner, Taehyun shot back. Yuta stood up and looked Taehyun in the eyes. I like the eyeliner. Taehyun narrowed his gaze and stared for a few moments. Releasing a sigh, he gave up the argument that never started. Seungmin watched and felt reminded of his own friends. That was all the motivation he needed to move forward with this intricate operation. Yuta walked over to Hyunwoo to draw her own eyeliner. She effortlessly drew the dramatic black lines on her eyes. We have a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time. If we leave in 10 minutes, we can get to Castletown at 10 p.m., she told the bandits as she put down the eyeliner pencil. The bandits nodded in response. Seungmin watched as Yuta, Hyunwoo, and Taehyun moved in unison. He snapped himself out of his daze and stood up to follow suit. Taehyun handed him a hooded cloak to put on. He carefully slipped his arms through the fabric as Hyunwoo and Taehyun walked out the door. Yuta stood by the door and looked back at Seungmin. I'll make sure we all make it out of this mess and end this nonsense the king is doing, she told Seungmin with a warmer tone. Seungmin nodded as he walked out the door, with Yuta following close behind. The four carefully, but hastily, traveled through the forest after exiting the slums. They kept to the mission and stuck in the formations they pre-planned. Yuta took the lead, while Hyunwoo and Taehyun traveled on either side of Seungmin. Time flew by as the four arrived nearby the castle town. Castle guards roamed the town on high alert, exactly how the bandits wanted it. Hyunwoo and Taehyun took Seungmin to a safe spot behind a store building while Yuta carefully approached a few guards. Quickly, she snuck behind the guards and hit the sweet spots on their necks to knock them out. The rest of the guards in the main square turned their attention to Yuta. That's it. Give me your attention, she spoke softly, but still loud enough for the guards to hear her. The guards raised their weapons towards Yuta. They were poised but radiated nervousness. Tell us who you are, or we shoot, one of the guards called out. Yuta smirked as she removed her hood. A few gasps echoed in the square. Shim Yuta. If I were you, I wouldn't shoot, she confidently said. The guards contemplated her words. They stayed silent, keeping their weapons aimed at Yuta. Yuta slowly walked towards the direction of the castle, but was stopped by a gunshot. Don't you dare move! If you kill me, you'll never find the crown prince, Yuta replied. She needed the upper hand. She needed to make it to the castle for the plan to be set in motion. The guards froze in place upon hearing about the crown prince. Shim Yuta kidnapped the prince during the ball several days ago. What are you after? The guard asked. I'm after the king. He's not fit to rule Arya, Yuta answered. The truth needed to come out. This was step one. The night air stiffened upon the words. Stiffened. Goodness. The night air stiffened upon the words. Silence overtook the scene, which made Yuta grow nervous. Several moments later, the air felt heavier, indicating a strong presence approaching. Shim Yuta, we finally meet! Yuta's eyes widened. She felt the color drain from her face when she realized who stood in front of her. Snapping back to reality, she narrowed her gaze. King Jungmin. Jungmin let out a hearty laugh. I commend you for managing to kidnap a member of the royal family. You've got guts, kid, he said with a smirk. Walking closer to her, he continued. I also heard a rumor about an attack tonight. Your doing, I assume? I really could have used your aptitude in the royal guard. You have more guts than half the military. I will never join your military when all you do is pawn away our lives to Lyrica, Yuta snapped. Jungmin's expression turned cold. So you're from that filthy slum. Such a shame. Now you have to pay for your crimes. How does a public execution sound? Yuta stood her ground, although internally panicking as the king raised a gun towards her. After a soft click from the gun, Yuta braced herself for the end. That's enough, father! Seungmin rushed to protect Yuta along with Hyunwoo and Taehyun. He stood face to face with the king. Jungmin chuckled, seeing his son on the other end of the gun. Seungmin, my son, I need you to move. Unless you've developed Stockholm Syndrome. Father, that is not the case. We need to address the real elephant in the room. Why have you sent hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent people to their deaths? For what? A deal that did not go your way? Wake up, father! There are better ways! Seungmin sternly replied. Confidence bubbled up within him. I appreciate you showing an interest in these matters now, but I'm afraid it's too late. You can either step aside and let me handle this criminal, or you can stand there and die for treason, Jungmin commanded as he placed his finger on the trigger. If you kill me, the public will question the king for killing his own son. Seungmin stood firm. So be it. Bang. You mean that's how that chapter ends? That's how that chapter ends? It doesn't help that the next chapter is titled Silence. That doesn't help. Whew. Chapter 11. Silence. Bang. Hyunwoo quickly pushed Seungmin out of the way to avoid certain death. Because of the push, the bullet grazed Hyunwoo's arm. Seungmin looked up at him with concern. Thank you, Hyunwoo, he quickly said. Hyunwoo, Taehyun, Seungmin, and Yuta quickly ran to hide from the king. You can thank me later when this is all finished, Hyunwoo replied with a small chuckle. The castle square broke out in pandemonium. Civilians revolted upon hearing the gunshot. What king fires a gun against his own son? The three bandits, plus Seungmin, slowly made their way south towards the forest. Yuta carefully watched as everyone began fighting the guards. Her heart sank when she saw the king partake in handling the physicality of the civilians. She looked at Seungmin and saw the same expression. Anger, sadness, and hurt painted the look in his eyes. As she reached out to him, a window broke near them. We need to split up. Try to head back to the slums, Yuta yelled to the others. The four of them promptly split to divide the attention of the guards. Yuta jumped through the broken window in hopes to find something to fight back with. She found a broom laying by a counter. After breaking the bristles off and leaving her a makeshift staff, she ran back outside. She swiftly fended off some of the guards before they could attack more. A flash of light blue clothing appeared in front of Yuta. The person was directing the civilians to leave the town. After looking at the person carefully, she spotted recognizable features. Sujin? Yuta questioned. Sujin nodded in acknowledgement and said, We need to get everyone out of here and headed for Pianara. What about the people of the slums? Yuta asked as she protected Sujin from a guard about to strike. Granny Nara is helping them leave as we speak. The girl that was with you that night is helping her too. Jiwoo? Good. Yuta felt a sense of relief before continuing to protect Sujin. The two continued to help the civilians while fending off the guards. Sujin helped the people run while Yuta fought off the guards. After several minutes, Yuta spotted Taehyun tending to a leg wound. A guard snuck up on him, about to strike. Yuta ran off to save Taehyun by whacking the guard in the head. My hero, Taehyun sighed in relief as he noticed her. Save it until we're done, Yuta curtly replied. Have the others made it out? I'm not sure. Some guards stabbed me in the leg, so I couldn't get very far, Taehyun answered. Yuta nodded as she looked over the wound. Hopefully we can get out of here and treat the wound properly. Sujin looked over and smiled to herself. Before moving towards the two, she was viciously pulled back. Nuna, watch out! After the shout, a gunshot echoed through the area. Sujin looked back and saw Seungmin holding her back in a panic. She was about to ask what happened, but her thoughts were interrupted when Jungmin walked around the corner with several guards. "I just saw you, Sujin. Where did you go?" Jungmin called out. "What is wrong with him?" Sujin angrily whispered at Seungmin. "Yes," Seungmin simply answered before pulling Sujin further behind a wall. He held his breath when Jungmin turned to find them. He smirked upon seeing the two. "It's been 5 years since I've seen the two of you together." Ah! Yuta jumped on the king's back while using the broken broomstick to choke him out. "Grab Taehyun and run!" she shouted while desperately trying to hold on. Seungmin looked at her with worried-filled eyes. "But Yuta, now!" Seungmin and Sujin ran towards Taehyun. Seungmin quickly picked up Taehyun, but was swiftly blocked by a guard's spear. Sujin noticed the wound on Seungmin's back from the attack. The guard reared back for a fatal attack. Acting quickly, Sujin pulled Seungmin out of the way. Shh! Silence engulfed the immediate area as Sujin's lifeless body dropped to the ground. Yuta, in a moment of pure shock, was flipped over Jungmin's back. She yelped in pain when hitting the ground. Jungmin pointed the gun at Yuta and quickly pulled the trigger. Taehyun launched himself towards Jungmin. He managed to push Jungmin's arms away from Yuta. "Run!" Taehyun yelled. Adrenaline took over as Yuta and Seungmin got back to their feet and started running. Yuta turned back to wait for Taehyun, but was met with Jungmin's hastily firing the gun at Taehyun's head. "No!" Yuta released a visceral scream. Seungmin grabbed Yuta and hightailed it back to the forest. "Don't look, just run. Run far away." Deep into the forest, Hyunwoo waited for them. He was about to give a happy greeting, but he saw the horrified expressions. He said nothing as he joined the two to run back to the slums. Operation Overcast was a complete failure. Silence. Complete and utter silence filled the air. Hyunwoo, Yuta, and Seungmin slowly walked into the door of the house. All three of them were battered and bruised, but it did not compare to the pain in their hearts. Hyunwoo and Seungmin plopped onto the couch while Yuta walked towards the kitchen. She returned to the living room with a large first aid kit. "Where are your wounds?" she asked, voice hoarse with little energy. Hyunwoo motioned to his left shoulder, where a small graze was. Seungmin only pointed to his back by his right shoulder blade. The gash was clearly visible. Yuta quickly cleaned the small graze on Hyunwoo's arm. After covering the graze with a large bandage, she moved on to Seungmin's back. Yuta carefully lifted Seungmin's shirt to gain easier access to the wound. She cleaned the blood around the gash first. The wound looked not as deep as it appeared. Easy to bandage. 6 butterfly bandages and 1 big piece of gauze later, the wound was covered. "Let's find some clean clothes," Yuta quietly said. "Sit." Yuta turned to look at Seungmin with a defeated expression. "Not now. Sit. Please." Yuta softly sighed, not willing to argue. She sat down on the couch. Seungmin grabbed the first aid kit and looked through the contents. Hyunwoo slowly stood up and walked to the once shared bedroom, leaving Yuta and Seungmin alone. Seungmin began cleaning all the minor scrapes and cuts. Yuta was lucky to not have major wounds. She flinched as a cold wipe touched her cheek. "Sorry," Seungmin muttered, as he focused on removing the smudged eyeliner. After a few moments, Seungmin held the wipe against her cheek. He held her tighter on instinct. It's okay to let it out, Yuta mumbled. Seungmin noticed the tears threatening to well up in Yuta's hazel eyes. Looking back on the situation, Yuta's cold demeanor sent alarming signals. It's not your fault, he calmly told her. Yuta looked into Seungmin's eyes and saw the genuine concern in them. The walls began to crack. One singular tear fell onto Yuta's cheek. Seungmin was quick to wipe it. Before more tears could threaten to spill over, the front door burst open. A frantic Mino ran in and quickly observed the situation. He could immediately feel a somber atmosphere. I don't know what happened, but I'm sorry. Seungmin let out a sad chuckle while Yuta willed her tears away. Seungmin stood up and walked towards Mino. How did it go on your end? He asked. Hyunwoo walked out of the bedroom and up to Seungmin. We evacuated most of the royal staff. Many of them are with families in smaller villages far from here, Mino answered. We caught wind of the fight that broke out in Castletown. Is everyone okay? Yuta stood up and walked up to Mino. She bowed her head sluggishly. I deeply apologize, she simply said before making her way upstairs. Seungmin watched helplessly as Yuta retreated. He turned back to Mino with sad eyes. Where are the others? He asked. They should be here in a few minutes, Mino answered. He looked around and noticed someone missing. Where is... Taehyun didn't make it, Seungmin quietly answered. Neither did Suji Nuna. Mino let out a small gasp. He placed a hand on Seungmin's shoulders as if to silently comfort him. Hyunwoo handed Seungmin a change of clothes. You can change in my room, he muttered. Hurt thickly laced his words. Seungmin took the clothes and left to change. Hyunwoo directed Mino to sit on the couch before standing guard at the door to watch for the others. 10 minutes later, Chan, Changbin, and Hyunjin arrived at the house. All of the men quickly discussed their next course of action and decided to call it a night. Hyunwoo helped set up the living room for everyone to sleep. While he was setting up the pillows and blankets, Seungmin snuck away upstairs. He noticed the door to Yuta's room slightly ajar. Pushing the door slowly, he saw Yuta laying on her bed asleep. She appeared to have changed clothes and properly washed her face. He knelt down next to the bed and slowly looked at her carefully. Sleep consumed him as he gently moved Yuta's hair out of her face. Yuta woke up with the sun in her face. Odd. She thought the door was closed. Opening her eyes, she was met with a surprise. Seungmin laid over her bed fast asleep. She slowly sat up not to disturb his sleep. Taking time to get her bearings, she noticed the sun from the hall window. It must have been late in the morning or almost the afternoon. As she moved to get out of bed, Seungmin began stirring. His tired eyes met with Yuta's as he stretched his arm. They both sat in silence for a few moments. The tension could be cut with a butter knife. Memories of the previous night flooded both their minds. Feelings of sadness replaced the initial anger and bitterness from the deaths of Taehyun and Sujin. Did you sleep all right? Seungmin asked, breaking the unbearable silence. Yuta tried to answer, but her voice was gone. Only a small crackle of a voice escaped her mouth. She settled to nod her head yes. Seungmin brushed a few hairs from Yuta's face and responded, Everyone's downstairs. Let's check in on them. Both of them stood up to stretch and take care of normal morning routines. After a few moments, the two made their way downstairs. Hyunwoo, Chan, Changbin, and Hyunjin sat in the living room, chatting casually while Mino ran around the kitchen cooking a meal. Yuta quickly walked to the kitchen and tried to get Mino to sit. Mino was in her kitchen. Before Yuta could say anything, Mino placed a finger on her forehead to stop her. You don't need to worry about anything. I will take care of the food, he calmly told her. But, Yuta coarsely argued. Mino sighed. Quit being stubborn and let me take care of this. Jeez, you're just like Seungmin, always insisting on things. Yuta pouted, but ultimately complied. She sat on one of the chairs in the living room. Seungmin noticed the dejected look and told her, Mino's a good cook. He's not going to ruin your kitchen. Yuta let out an inaudible chuckle. Everyone who sat in the living room watched Yuta carefully, especially Hyunwoo and Seungmin. The tension lifted slightly when everyone casually engaged in conversation. Several moments later, Mino called everyone to sit and eat. Tension lifted more as they started eating in silence. Nothing beats a hearty meal to ease the mind. After finishing their meals and cleaning the table, they moved back to the living room. Silence occupied the first few moments until Chan broke the silence. What's the plan now? He asked. King Jungmin is still rampant, but I think more people are against him now, Mino added. Yuta pondered on her own thoughts. The king of Arya must be stopped. His violent outburst in front of his people surely tarnished his reputation. A light bulb lit up in her mind. There's only one thing to do now, she quietly uttered under her breath. The group turned their attention to Yuta and were shocked upon the words she spoke next. Heavy stuff. Heavy stuff. Okay. Ads are gonna start here in a little bit, just a fair warning. I've tried to delay them as best as I could. We are in chapter 12, Inferno. Sunshine cast an eerie midday glow over the slums. Emptiness filled the air as Yuta and Hyunwoo searched the place they called home. The people had been evacuated to, presumably, the nearby village of Pianara. Sujin really did help evacuate the people, Hyunwoo commented. Yuta nodded as she looked solemnly at the empty market. I won't let that effort go wasted. This plan won't work if there are people here. And you really think this is the only hope? Hyunwoo asked, with concern lacing his voice. It's the way Taehyun would want us to go out, Yuta answered while sadly smiling. Let's keep looking around to make sure nothing was left behind. Hyunwoo nodded as the two continued walking around the slums. The once bitterly lively area became a vast, desolate ghost town. While exploring, Yuta found a baseball glove lying on the ground. She picked it up and remembered when she convinced Seungmin to play baseball with the children. Using the memory as fuel, she continued to search around. The mission was clear. Hopefully, she will meet those kids again. Everything is clear on this side. Last place to check is Granny Nada's, Hyunwoo said out loud. The two started walking towards a familiar house. Hyunwoo kept a close eye on Yuta. Her walls were up again, he could tell. The walls had slipped with the prints. Wait. He gently nudged Yuta, and as he said, How's Princey Boy holding up? Yuta was mildly taken aback by the question. I actually don't know how he's holding up. He won't tell me. How so? Hyunwoo asked. He's impossible to talk to. I'm trying to be a good person and check on him first, but he won't let me. It's annoying. Yuna answered, letting pure emotion take over. Hyunwoo chuckled at the response. Despite what happened yesterday, he is still a prince. It's probably ingrained into him to check on everyone else first. Then explain why he answered his right-hand man and not me. Yuna glared with her answer. Hyunwoo thought about Yuda's answer. He knew exactly what the problem was. Does he tell her? Right as he opened his mouth to speak, they arrived at Granny Nada's house. Immediately, they noticed how the place was in much more pristine condition than the last time they saw it. While investigating, they noticed the door was unlocked. Yuta carefully opened it, and it was met with a letter. It was met with a letter sitting on the table. She walked over, picked it up, and read the delicately written words. Dear Yuta, you must be incredibly worried about everyone. If you find this, you will know that everyone evacuated. It started with you, and now will end with you. I'll see you when you get here. Yuta's arm fell to her side after reading the short letter. She stared blankly towards the floor, processing the words. Yuno placed a comforting hand on Yuta's shoulder. Silent words were exchanged as they left Granny Nada's house to return to their own. 10 minutes later, they arrived back at their home. Walking in the door, they were greeted with several boxes. Changbin carried a large box down the stairs and placed it in the living room. When was your friend with the carriage supposed to be here? Changbin asked. Jiwoo said she'd be here in a few hours, Yuta replied. Is that everything? As if on cue, Seungmin walked downstairs with a smaller box. This is the last box, he calmly said. Yuta and Seungmin locked eyes for a few moments. Everyone in the house could feel the awkwardness between the two. With a small nod, Yuta walked around the house one last time. Seungmin kept a close eye on her after setting down the last box. Hyunjin leaned towards Hyunwoo and whispered, Does she? Yes, Hyunwoo whispered back. Pause. Does he? Yes, Hyunjin answered. The two nodded in confirmation. Mino walked up to the two, looked them both in the eyes, and immediately knew what they were on about. Ultimately, he decided to ignore the whispers and giggles. Everyone migrated to sit in the living room. Most exchanged in casual conversation in an attempt to ease the tension before plans were set into motion. The true calm before the storm. 2 hours fly by, indicated by the sun beginning to set. A subtle knock on the door snapped everyone back to reality. Yuta ran to open the door. A familiar face greeted her. It's been a while, Lily, Yuta said with a sad smile. Lily bowed her head, mirroring Yuta's sad smile. I wish we could have met under different circumstances. Is everything ready to load up? Yuta nodded and turned to the men in the living room. Let's load up everything in the carriage, she calmly commanded. Everyone pitched in while carrying boxes. Seungmin and Yuta carried the last 2 boxes. Lily made sure everything was secure before climbing into the driver's box. I will head to Pianera as fast as I can, she told Yuta in a comforting tone. That makes 2 favors I owe you, Yuta replied. 2? Seungmin asked curiously. She drove us to the castle for the ball a month ago, Hyunwoo answered. Seungmin and Mino froze for a moment. The puzzle pieces to Seungmin's kidnapping fell into place. It really was a meticulous operation. If anyone did not trust Yuta's plans before, they trust them now. Lily drove away on the carriage filled with boxes of the bandits' belongings. Yuta's pleasant smile fell the further the carriage moved. The clock started ticking as time was no longer on their side. Taking a deep breath, the fire of determination lit within Yuta. With one last look at everyone, and one lasting look at Seungmin, Yuta grabbed some supplies and headed towards the castle. Dark blue skies with dimly lit sparkles of the stars painted the night sky of the castle town. An ominous air surrounded the empty buildings. Yuta walked up to the main square carrying 3 jerry cans. She set 2 of them on the ground and started pouring the contents of the jerry can throughout the square. The clear liquid coated the pathways to the buildings. Hesitation took over for a brief moment as she poured the liquid over the area Taehyun was shot. Bloodstains covered the area where the body was clearly moved. A small glint caught Yuta's eyes. She picked the object up and realized what it was. Clutching the small gold object, she silently cursed the king. Using those thoughts as motivation, she continued her task. After emptying 1 jerry can, she moved on to the next. She walked on the path to the castle grounds. After emptying the 2nd jerry can, she grabbed the 3rd and final one. Pouring the contents of the last jerry can, she emptied it right in front of the castle. She threw the can right at the unmanned gate. All thoughts of everything flooded into her mind. The many people who had their lives sacrificed. The many children who live with no parents due to the war. The war that never existed. Are you ready? Yuta looked to her right to see Seungmin standing next to her. She remembered the conversation from nights ago. What is he feeling? He never wanted to be a prince, but this was his home. Surely he did not want his home to disappear. The real question is, are you ready? Yuta asked as she turned to look up at him. She can see the worry in his eyes, despite his overall expression remaining neutral. Seungmin watched Yuta carefully. Her demeanor felt softer than usual, which was a stark contrast to when they first met. He thought back several years, his father countlessly bugging him about needing to meet his royal duties, the secrets kept from him due to not being interested, the many lives of the people sacrificed for selfish gain. He needed an out, and this was it. If we don't do this now, we never will, Seungmin answered Yuta with a soft but confident tone in his voice. Yuta nodded. After taking a deep breath, Yuta and Seungmin walked up to the door and gave a big knock. The 2 ran away to the castle town square. As predicted, several guards followed their trail. You 2 can't run away from me this time! Yuta and Seungmin immediately recognized Kim Jungmin's voice. Heavy footsteps indicated Jungmin was following them. Perfect. The 2 ran into the main square and picked up the most important part of the plan. Yuta grabbed the box of matches, pulled out a match, and looked Jungmin in the eyes. You ruined the lives of so many of your people, sending them to their needless deaths. Now, you burn in the hell you created. Yuta called out as she struck the match and threw it onto the gasoline poured everywhere. The moment the match hit the ground, Seungmin and Yuta ran as fast as they could away from the growing flames. Jungmin tried his best to run after them, but a wall of flame blocked his path. The castle town drowned in a sea of fire. Houses burst with flames, buildings viciously tumbled down, and the fountain's water rained useless against the blazes. Jungmin stared in horror as everything he worked for drowned in red-hot inferno. Off at a nearby cliff, overlooking the castle town, Yuta and Seungmin finally arrived at the point they could stop running. Seungmin walked up to the edge to watch the fire. Yuta hesitated for a moment. All the moments she spent with him overwhelmed her. Prince, she tried to speak, but stopped herself. Prince? How could he be a prince with a kingdom on fire? That nickname needed to die with Arya. Seungmin. Seungmin turned around and felt the warmth he'd never felt before. He saw the most genuine look in Yuta's eyes. She walked up to him slowly and silently. They looked to the town and watched the flames rise. This was the moment they waited for. Yuta's tense shoulders relaxed as she watched the flames reach the castle grounds. Emotions threatened to pour out, but Yuta pushed them away. Seungmin noticed the subtleties in Yuta's body language and gently pulled her close to him. "You can let it out now," he calmly told her. Yuta shook her head and tried to pull away. Seungmin huffed out a sigh and pulled her closer. "Quit being stubborn for 1 second," he mumbled as he leaned down, lifted her chin, and placed a gentle kiss to her lips. Shock only lasted 1 second before Yuta found herself kissing him back. Everything pent up over the last month was released. Seungmin pulled back and stared into her eyes. The glow of the fire reflected off Yuta's hazel eyes, turning them a faint orange color. He pulled her to his chest and let Yuta let out all her emotions. The crackling of the fire overtook the sounds of Yuta's crying. Faint rustling sounds caught Seungmin's attention. He kept Yuta close as he looked towards the sound. A huge relief washed over him when he saw Hyunwoo, Mino, Chan, Changbin, and Hyunjin. Yuta, through her tears, turned away from the group in hopes they would not see her completely vulnerable. "Let's head to the village. You two deserve much-needed rest," Mino calmly advised. The group moved to help Seungmin and Yuta walk away from the fire towards the village. Mixed emotions flooded the two. Their homes were no more, for better or for worse. But in the moment, they felt a strange sense of relief. The years of torment for Yuta and Seungmin were over. Chapter 13. The last chapter. Rewriting history. Sunshine coated the vast skies of the growing town of Pianara. Green trees, purple flowers, and orange butterflies painted the small town. Townsfolk were out and about, living their busy lives. Many kids ran through the streets in an attempt to make it to their schools on time. One kid walked casually in the midst of the other hasty kids. A young boy, no older than 10, meandered his way towards the school at the end of the block. He gave a wide smile towards a familiar teacher guarding the door. "Good morning, Hoojin, sir," the boy greeted as he nodded his head happily. "Ugh, it's Hyunjin, and you're late again," Hyunjin scolded the young boy. "Come on, Hyunju, sir. It's the first thing in the morning, and you know my dad. You can cut me some slack, right?" the young boy pleaded. Hyunjin let out a groan. "Ugh, Hyunjin. And just because I know your dad does not mean you can get away with everything." The boy let slip a smirk as he walked past Hyunjin and into the school. Upon taking one singular step inside the school, "Kim Taehyun!" The boy, Taehyun, stopped immediately and groaned. "Hyunjin, I don't want to go to class today. I don't want to learn about things I already know." "So you do know my name," Hyunjin smirked. He took a step closer to Taehyun. "Like you said, I know your dad. If you skip class today, he'll be the first to know." Taehyun huffed out a pouty sigh as he reluctantly walked through the halls towards his classroom. He sat down at his desk with a pout. The female teacher noticed his pout. She sauntered towards his desk. "What's wrong, Taehyun?" she asked. "Miss Chaeyoung, I don't want to learn about the Great Fire of Arya," Taehyun complained. "Taehyun, the Great Fire of Arya is extremely important in recent history. You should probably pay attention in class today," Chaeyoung calmly told Taehyun. "But Miss Chaeyoung, I already know—" "Not now, Taehyun." Chaeyoung shook her head as she walked back up to the front of the class and pulled out her textbook. She began her lecture on the Great Fire of Arya. 13 years ago, in the once great kingdom of Arya, a tyrannical king ruled under a false kindness for his people. A small group of people known as the Veritas Bandits acted in revolt from being convinced there was a war with the neighboring country of Lyrica. The actions of the king led the bandits to take drastic measures. After they attempted an attack on the royal family, the bandits were backed into a corner. So they went out the next night and set the castle and its nearby town on fire. Some people claimed the bandits were the good guys, while others claimed they did whatever they pleased. However, they disappeared the night of the fire, thus leaving the kingdom in a state of array. The entire castle town was covered in ashes for several months to a year. The kingdom of Aria was never able to recover. The area now resides as neutral territory between Baritona and Lyrica. Chae-Young flipped the page in a book and urged the kids to do so. Going back to it, the words veritas means truth. There are people out there who say all the bandits wanted to do was expose the truth. Most of the text gives varying information on the motives of the bandits. I want you to look into the textbook and write why you think the bandits did it. Taehyun rolled his eyes while others were clamoring to get started on the assignment. Class flew by in an instant as the bell rung to signal class was over. Dragging his feet, Taehyun made his way to his next class. The rest of the day moved slowly for him. His mind was filled with the history lesson. Why were so many people wanting to know about this stupid fire? Several hours flew by while he was consumed with the negative thoughts. The final bell rung and, much like in the morning, everyone scrambled to run home while Taehyun slowly walked the few blocks. He paused when he walked up to a 2-story white house. Shaking his head, he walked inside the door and was greeted with the smell of freshly cooked meat. "Smells good," he said, running to the kitchen with all his might. His forehead was met with a stiff arm and glare. "Taehyun, you know the rules. Homework first." Taehyun's shoulders dropped in an admission to defeat. "All right, Yuta." "What was that?" "Nothing, Mom. You're the best. I'll get my homework done straight away, Mom." Taehyun quickly ran to his room and got to work. Yuta sighed, running a hand through her long blonde hair. "That damn kid. Whatever happened to using Mom like a normal kid?" she thought out loud. She returned back to cooking the food while taking the gamble to trust Taehyun with his homework. Several moments later, Yuta finished up the cooking. Taehyun walked into the kitchen and sat at the table. "I need your help with my homework," he said casually, making Yuta look at him. "What were your motives for the Great Fire of Aria?" Yuta froze. What did he say? Great Fire of Aria? Motives? What are they teaching kids these days? "Why do you need to know that?" she asked carefully. "Our homework is to write why we think the bandits' motives were for the fire." "And I want to get the answer straight from the source," Taehyun answered. He leaned on the table and puffed out his cheeks. "What did you learn about the fire, then?" Yuta asked as she set aside the dishes filled with food. "King bad, bandit may be good, and nobody knows what happened to said bandits," Taehyun replied. "But you're the one who did it. I want to hear it from you." Yuta thought about her response for several moments. An idea popped into her head. She quickly ran to her room upstairs with Taehyun watching confusedly. She returned moments later with a specific item in her hand. "We were going to wait until you were a little older, but apparently they're teaching about this stupid fire nowadays," she said as she handed Taehyun the object. A gold bracelet. Taehyun inspected the bracelet carefully. He noticed 3 names engraved. Shim Yuta, Shim Hyunwoo, Kang Taehyun. Taehyun? "Why is my name here?" Taehyun asked while looking up at Yuta. The sound of the front door opening caught the attention of Yuta and Taehyun. Yuta briefly ignored the door as she turned back to Taehyun. "Your name came from my dear friend, Kang Taehyun," she calmly admitted. She felt a strong hand on her shoulder as soon as she said her friend's name. Taehyun looked up at the other person stood by Yuta. "Seungmin, who was he?" "That's Dad to you, and Kang Taehyun, along with your mom and Uncle Hyunwoo, were part of the Veritas Bandits, who did whatever they could to help the people of Aria," Seungmin straightforwardly answered, tone feeling almost formal. Taehyun perked up. "I knew Mom and Uncle Hyunwoo were, but why is the third guy special?" "You wanted to know the motives for the fire, right?" Yuta asked. "Kang Taehyun was a very close friend who sacrificed his life for me. That's when I knew he went too far." Seungmin held Yuta's shoulder comfortingly. That's why you have that name, to honor the one who let us live, he told Taehyun. So, all in all, the reason we did it was to stop a bad guy from doing more bad things, Yuta said as she collected herself. Anyway, let me see your textbook, and I'll look through while you guys eat. Yuta left the kitchen to find Taehyun's textbook. The two boys gathered their plates and food and sat to eat. The air in the house felt odd, but calming. Yuta sat in the living room, scrubbing through the textbook, where it talked about the great fire of Arya. She would be damned if her son learned wrong information at school. Several minutes later, the boys were done with their food and moved to the living room. Taehyun sat next to Yuta and looked at her notes. So many words. What's this supposed to be? He asked his mom. All of the discrepancies. While the gist of what happened is here, there's still so much wrong, Yuta answered. Like Mino-chan, Changbin, and Hyunjin busted their asses to make sure all the documents were secure before the first attack ever happened. Do these textbook authors not care? Yuta, maybe you need a break, Seungmin suggested. Just let these guys write what they want. Most history textbooks can be extremely inaccurate sometimes. Yuta sighed as she slammed the textbook shut and handed it to Taehyun. Anyway, your assignment. Just pad out your writing with the key points of King Bad Karma took too long. Yes, Yuta, Taehyun smiled and began running to his room. Excuse me? Yes, Mom. That's what I thought, Yuta scoffed with a smirk. That kid really lives up to his namesake. Seungmin let out a small laugh at the statement. 10-year-old boys are little shits. Were you like that at all? Yuta asked as she leaned back on the couch. Not really. I didn't get to do too much as a kid. Father was busy ruling the country and didn't have much time for me, Seungmin answered as he stood up to check on Taehyun, who was sat at his desk hard at work. Yuta hummed and thought. She looked around the living room and noticed something peeking out of a shelf. Standing up, she walked over to the item and pulled it out. It was an old baseball glove, the one she salvaged from the slums 13 years ago. She looked over at Seungmin and her heart melted. She held up the glove to him and motioned towards the door. Seungmin picked up what she wanted immediately. He looked back at Taehyun and called out, "Don't worry about your homework. Let's go outside." Taehyun jumped at the opportunity and grabbed the ball glove out of Yuta's hands and ran out the door. Yuta laughed at the enthusiasm. She smiled brightly when she saw Seungmin go outside and play catch with Taehyun, something he never got to do in his own childhood. To be able to freely go outside to play, to not worry about family going away, to not worry about death, and to have a childhood Seungmin and Yuta never got to have. All of the effort 13 years ago became worth it in this one moment. And that's it. That's the end. Yay! We did it! Whew! Man, I didn't realize how much reading specific parts were gonna almost make me cry, because I'm the one who wrote these damn things. But yay! We did it! So yeah, that was Crowned by Chaos. I don't think I ever said the title of the story. I don't think I ever said the title of it. It's called Crowned by Chaos. So, yeah, that'll be it for today. Schedule for the week tomorrow. We're just gonna play some Mario Party. Which Mario Party? I don't know. It's just not gonna be 2. It's just not gonna be 2. And then Friday we start Pokemon. We start a Pokemon challenge run in one of the games, and it's gonna be real fun. So let's see here. Who is? Ooh. Maybe. Blue Amalga is live right now. Let's go raid Blue Amalga. I do know Blue Manga also knows K-pop, and I also know he's a fan of Stray Kids as well, so maybe it'll work. So we're gonna go raid Blue Manga. Anyone's here? We'll just raid message with the title of the story. That's our raid message. Crowned by Chaos is the title of the story, and that's what we're gonna do. No worries, Johnny, and you're very welcome. You are very welcome. I have no idea what the next fanfiction's gonna be. I have like zero idea. I don't have zero idea. I have some ideas brewing in my mind, but I haven't started writing it yet. I will get to that later. But yeah, raid message Crowned by Chaos. If you are a sub to me, you can use my emotes. If you are not, that's not a problem. Just use whatever emotes you have. Mondays are Okami, Tuesdays and Thursdays are Mario Party, and Wednesdays and Fridays will be Pokemon. So thank you everyone for coming out and hanging out, and we will see you next time.